Yes, Heather's in the hallway.
Welcome to our first annual Vice Mayor's Summer Meeting. You will notice a couple of changes. I'm not very tolerant, so just bear with me. If you decide to come to the podium and talk, please keep your comments limited to the topic that we're on, and do your very best not to repeat what somebody's already said. I appreciate it. Roll call, zone 1.
Present.
2.
Here.
I'm here. Zone 4. And the mayor is has an excused absence, along with us here tonight are Scott Simpson, city attorney, Lee Everett, the city administrator, and Dominique. I wish I knew your last name. That's terrible that I don't. Oh, that's Dominique Allgood. Okay. All right, so let's move on. We've all done the Pledge of Allegiance a million times. If there's nobody here to do an invocation, we'll just move right on. 2, additions, deletions, or modifications. Okay, Roger is inherent on doing the pledge. If there's someone who'd like to do a prayer, they can volunteer. Okay, you got one? Okay, good enough. So let's do the invocation by Charlene, and then we'll do a pledge of allegiance.
Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us to engage in meaningful discussion. Allow us to grow closer as a group and nurture the bonds of community. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Additions, deletions, or modifications to the agenda? Anyone? Lee?
First one is item 9B, empty road repair. I'd like to pull that from the agenda. We intend to revamp that project and come back later. City attorney suggests that we can reject that bid, so rather than pull it, then let's leave it on the agenda. You can reject the bid, and what we tend to do is come back with a main project or bid play for the contract. Another item.
9E. E.
Ordinance related to the construction of sidewalk. This particular ordinance was drafted by the city attorney based on the previous discussions. We had a workshop. Since that time, city attorney and myself had a chance to talk with our retained attorney in Tallahassee, whose specialty is fees and assessments and things like that. And we're not sure that our particular ordinance draft before you consider it tonight is going to either solve the problem or enhance the situation or detract from it. So we'd like to have the discussion, but not to discuss the opportunity for adopting that particular ordinance. We're not recommending the ordinance. We do believe that the discussion at that particular time is appropriate, but not to consider the ordinance. We'll go back to you with another ordinance. We think from the discussion we had that will be really improved. So those two items, ask you to reject bids for the road, from one bid issue to tender, and to take off the ordinance with consideration of lead on the kind of discussion that the sidewalk for the community.
You stole my thunder. I was going to say both of those things. Okay, we have approval of minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes. May 11th and May 30th for the workshop.
Motion to approve by Heather Rutledge and seconded by Charlie Bishop for the approval of both sets of May minutes. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Aye.
I was wondering if I could discuss one thing about the bills paid report though.
Go right ahead.
But that'll be further down, I'm sorry.
Well, that's, after the presentation. You want to do the presentation first? Do we have a presentation? No. No presentation? No. Okay, then we're at the consent agenda.
So I was hoping to ask staff about certain bills, the city attorney fee specifically, and that is on the first page, page 1 of the expense approval report, and the sidewalk survey on page 2, the last item on Fund 1.
Are you directing that to the city administrator?
I'm sorry.
Are you directing those questions to the administrator?
Yes, please.
What specifically about the city attorney's bill or the other one? Do you want to comment?
Well, the city attorney bill looked larger or maybe you could kind of dive in and dissect that a bit.
I'd have to look at the statement. There should be a detailed statement that has everything. The last few months have been more than normal. This last month, things I can think of, we were finalizing the gym stuff, both the agreement and the application to the county that had to be submitted in the last month. I did it last month. We got that submitted. We were working with the finalizing the agreement with the woods. Trying to think what else. Sports camp project. We had some workshops and meetings with the developer, dealing with the new law that was adopted that came into effect. There should be a statement that lists all the different things, and it's broken down by the date.
Right.
There's a description of what it is and how much time was spent. I'm just kind of trying to go off memory.
Right.
But there's, the last, not just this month, the last few months have been expensive, but there have been, notice that there's some reoccurring issues that I know of. I know we had our first, I don't think it was last month, but we had our first risk protection order hearing. That's where we seize a gun from somebody. That's something that we've never done before in the city. We've done that within the last couple months. It's something we've never done before. At least for Lake Helen, we've never done that. I'm trying to think what else there was something major.
Does the union fall into this?
No, I'm not involved with the union stuff. This was, going to that last meeting was the first time I've been involved with the union for a long time.
Thank you. And then if we could dive in a little bit to the sidewalk survey.
The sidewalk survey, as you recall from one of our previous workshops, we do not have an up-to-date survey of what streets had sidewalks, what streets did not, and what sidewalks were required major repairs. So I did retain two of our citizens in the community who literally walked 157 miles of the streets within the city and to note the condition of the sidewalks, whether they were present, not present, or whether they were in good shape or deteriorating. And we have that report, and it's both in the Excel spreadsheet format and as a map that we use as we continue through the discussion of the sidewalks and how we go about implementing the sidewalk policy. As you know from some of our previous discussions recently, the ordinances we deal with are somewhat contradictory and it's caused a little confusion. We want to go back and come up with a better solution. Today, we thought we had a better solution. In hindsight, as we continued our investigation, we're not happy with the ordinance we presented to you this evening for the first reading. We want to delve into it a little deeper. There's so many issues. The construction activities can be coming in the next several years for stormwater and water. We're making sure we don't put in fresh sidewalks and then tear them up 2 weeks later. And there's also the issue of our sidewalks appropriate in every section of the community. Some parts of the community have advocated for bridle paths as an example, because it's horse country. So do we want to permit bridle paths, and so how does that deal with sidewalks? And how do you pay for sidewalks? Now there are certain areas of the city, namely the private subdivisions, the woods and Faith Road, where those sidewalks are already part of the approved development order, so we're not affected by this discussion. But the application of the law in previous years, going back a number of years, has not been equally applied to the community. So we really have, I'm trying to think of a better word than mess. That's probably a good word for it. We have the application of laws in various stages of compliance. We just don't have a good handle on it. Because of all that, we want to get a base map of our current situation, so to be able to say, here's how many we have of this, here's where we are good, here's what we have sidewalks, here's what we don't have sidewalks.
So did we have a contract with this talent, or how did we acquire this talent for this position?
During the Hurricane Ian debris collection, we hired a number of people we call monitors. And they were with the crews that were picking up the debris. It's required, if you really want to justify the reimbursement process by FEMA, they simply won't take your word for it. We picked up X number of cubic yards of material, so we hired monitors. We hired approximately, I would say, 6 or 7 monitors who worked on that process. 2 of those monitors I found to be very efficient, very reliable, very talented, and they are the ones I went to, not only for this project, I've used them in the past for other projects where we had a discrete project for them to report back on. And that's exactly what they did. So can't call them a contractor, because they're the citizens, but we agreed on a per hour cost, and they did what I asked them to do. And so we have that result.
Part-time labor.
I'm sorry?
Part-time labor?
You could call them that, yeah.
Okay. So the Reader's Digest version is you hired a couple of people to do a survey of all the sidewalks in the community to tell us where they weren't, and what was broken.
Yeah, it was specific only to that topic and only to that part of the topic.
Is that sufficient?
I think I'm satisfied for now.
Okay, all right.
And the one thing I also had looking at the statement for the sidewalk issue, that's taken up a lot of time last week. We had a workshop on it, I had meetings with Kayla Troy, with a meeting, on-site meeting, and then trying to come up with, after our workshop, the new ordinance and regulations, and try to address the issue, which we'll talk about later. But the sidewalk issue was a lot of time, significant amount of time.
Anyone else? Nancy, do you want to question something on the expense report?
I do. Ready to come forward?
Go ahead.
Nancy Weary, 435 West Delaware. Nancy Weary, 435 West Delaware. I have a couple of questions. One of them is, why was that opportunity, and I've heard this from other people in the community, why that opportunity was not given to other people to apply for that position, because it is a good chunk of money. That's one thing. The second thing is, I'd like to know why we're paying Ernie Peterson $1,200 or $1,000 a month, and we've been doing this for about a year and a half, and who is that and what is that for?
I gave you the scenario of how we hired our monitors. We really went out to the community to hire the monitors, and these are individuals that responded to that first challenge, and we simply incorporated this particular assignment into those who already had the quote on board, if you will. Ernie Peterson is a retired staff member of the Volusia County Property Appraiser's Office, retired from them. He works for about 10 other cities on the same basis as we retain him. He is our go-to person for any issues dealing with properties. He monitors all the properties for the city for both assessment purposes and for ad valorem tax purposes. Keeps a current record monthly on what our tax value increase will be for the next year. Coming up with just at 13% increased evaluation, tax evaluation. And that comes not only from new construction, but also from individuals selling their properties and say our home is not being applicable anymore to those properties. But he is our person that goes to any questions on property appraisers or assessment activities. He's the one that represents us before the property appraiser. It is a service that is absolutely, I won't say necessary, but he is certainly well justified in what he does in the community. As I say, he works for a number of other cities.
I'd like to say something about all of that too. FEMA also would like to know how they went about hiring monitors, because nothing was put out for a bid or anything like that. So that's one question they have. And the cost of this sidewalk survey is actually going to go up even more because they need to make a map from that. And that would be, I believe, Derek, the engineer's job.
Well, actually, we did the map of it.
You did the map, but we haven't got a bill for it yet.
I don't know, he's going to charge us.
Oh, he's going to do it for free? Are you doing that for free?
Occasionally he does it.
Any additional questions? I do know Ernie, and a good friend of mine I went to high school with, who's property appraiser for 30 years. Ernie is highly touted by him, so as far as the professional is concerned, he's doing the job. I know he's more than qualified. There are certain decisions that get made at the administrative level as far as expenses are concerned that there has to be some wiggle room for them to make decisions. And I think that when it starts to get to $1,000 a month, probably should have run past the board, and I don't remember it being done. Maybe it was, and I just don't remember it, but that's just kind of helps keep you out of trouble.
For the record, I'm not opposed to Mr. Peterson. I'm just curious how.
The process.
It's been over a year and a half revolving.
So do I have a motion? Do we have a motion to approve the expense report? Can I get a motion to approve the expense report? Basically the consent agenda, because that's all that's in there. Motion by Ms. Bishop to approve, seconded by Commissioner Eckert. All those in favor say aye. 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 Motion passed unanimous. Now we'll move on. Old business. The use of the travel trailer. I read this in there, and there was some talk about where it actually was and where the property was. I don't know that that's actually pursuant to the memo, but go ahead and bring us up to speed, Lee.
This is a request from FEMA that a travel trailer be allowed to reside on residential properties within the city of Lake Helen for a duration not to exceed 6 months for the purpose of providing temporary housing for an individual whose home is destroyed by Hurricane Ian. Now, that's the information I had, which I presented to the commission last meeting, and from that, we developed the ordinance we have. Subsequent to that, we learned that all of that was true, but the location of the property damage was not in Lake Helen, it's actually in Smyrna Beach. The travel trailer is on property owned by the sister of the individual who owned the property in Smyrna Beach. So he's basically, he's basically living on his sister's backyard, and he was paying for the trailer. It was necessary to do an ordinance because our ordinances right now only provide for the living in the trailer for 2 weeks, 2 more weeks with the extension approved by the commission. So the 6 months obviously ran contrary to that.
Do we need an addition to that particular motion that says that the damaged property has to be in the city of Lake Helen in order for the trailer to be there?
It's not necessary. You can put that in there, but it's not necessary for the situation. It's simply the ordinance we're modifying has to do with living in a trailer in the city on property zoned residential. It doesn't say anything about why they're there. Presumably it was written to keep tourists from coming in with their trailers and parking. So this satisfies that requirement. I just wanted you to know that I had not understood from FEMA exactly the scenario that was we were reacting to, being that the damaged property is actually in another city. I don't think it's germane to the issue, but I wanted you to know that that's what I found out since then.
I got a question on it because the addition that you're wanting in there does not address the issue that FEMA requested, because the steps, all the steps in there say that it needs to be located on the property that has the residence that is uninhabitable. So since that's in New Smyrna, that means they can't put it here in Lake Helen. So something needs to be done to where if it's a family member or relative of somebody that has a property in Lake Helen, that they be allowed to do it no matter where the damage occurred, because Lake Helen seems to be protected from a lot of the majority of storms that hit the coastline area. And so our chances of having damage, plus being higher than the lower areas along the coast, afford us that protection also, that this may end up being, you know, a refuge for storm victims in the future.
You know, this was drafted after the meeting, and Lee was under the impression that that person's house was damaged, and they were asking for a FEMA trailer to live in while their house was being erected. That's how this was drafted, correct? This would not accommodate that particular request. I still think this is a good ordinance for y'all to consider. We put it together. But if you want to allow someone to live in a particular scenario that which we got all the facts, this ordinance would have to be, there would have to be additional provisions or something rewritten in this to accommodate that, because this would not accommodate the current situation.
I think there needs to be something added into it to allow for a relative that has a damaged residence outside of the city to have a FEMA joint and emergency that occurred joint and declared emergency.
Well, what my thoughts when I wrote this was I didn't put in a requirement, because initially I thought we were talking about somebody's own home damage, they want to put a temporary living facility there while they're fixing their own home. So it was a requirement that it be homestead. I did not require that it be a natural disaster or a declared state of emergency or anything like that, because I thought it might be reasonable to allow someone who in their own house, maybe was hit with a tornado and no one else's house was damaged, or the house burned and only affected their property, that we might want to consider that alternative. If we're going to consider allowing someone to move in from where, you know, to relocate here, I guess the question, then we probably want to say it needs to be, you know, if we're going to allow that situation, do we want to say it has to be a declared state of emergency? It has to be, does the person have to move from Volusia County or other part of the state of Florida, or can they move from anywhere in the United States and live here? Do we still want to require that where they're moving from is their homestead? The proof of that was their homestead. And I also did not include rental property. If it's rental, you can go rent somewhere else. You're not going to be able to move in here just because an apartment got damaged. I don't think that's, I think it should be homestead. And if we're going to start opening it up to allow a family member, probably ought to define that. How far out would one in terms of the family, but probably needs to be a clear natural disaster. I don't know if you want to go outside the state of Florida, or
You
go
go
outside
as
the
far as, we can have a local declared disaster. It doesn't have to be done by the state, we can have a local one.
declared by Volusia County.
Declared by Volusia County, and I think the mayor can just declare one if it's a local one inside the city, it doesn't affect the county. The county will usually back us up and declare one.
I don't know if I've ever heard of this. Usually when a city declares a state of emergency, it's pursuant to an emergency management plan that they've adopted under state law, which we haven't done. We take it back to counties. So I don't know if we can declare it in the county or have the county declare it. But we can say it's a declared state of emergency in the jurisdiction. Do y'all want to limit it to homestead only? Their homestead was named, if you're going to relocate here, it should be.
My opinion,
On the residents, yeah.
in my opinion, we're talking about a one-off here. In my opinion, when we deal with one-offs, you come to City Hall, you petition the commission and say, I know this doesn't fit here, will you allow it? Because when we start making ordinances to take care of one-offs, I think that's a mistake. So I think it's just fine, just the way it is, and if, like in this particular case, if we would have known ahead of time that the person was coming from New Smyrna, then they could have come in and asked, hey, we don't live in Lake Helen, we'd like to be able to do this, can we do it? And then allow the commission to make that decision.
Then at a minimum, what we need to do is we need to put into the ordinance the authority for the commission to extend it beyond 28 days. Because our ordinance limits the time frame. So if we came back to you and said, hey, we want to do this one-off, this person wants to just be here for 6 months, and we approve it, technically no. Under the authority of the code, I think administratively you can do 2 weeks, and then the next 2 weeks is approved by the commission, I believe. So we can strike all this and just give you the discretion, the commission discretion, to authorize stays, on properties, and just kind of list the criteria that you would consider. Is that what you, and then not put a time frame on it? Just family member from a natural disaster, residence destroyed, things like that?
I don't have a problem with a timeline, because 6 months usually is enough time for somebody to get their home, their domicile, fixed back up where they can go to work. And let's talk about this in the real world. Somebody from California is not coming to Lake Helen to live in a place because their house was destroyed by fire out there, if they have a job. And those people have jobs. So I consider this to be, like I said, a one-off. And I just, in general practice, I just don't think it's a good idea to pass ordinances that take care of one-offs. I think the ordinance saying, just the way it sits there, only allows 2 weeks. And we wanted to extend it to allow FEMA to have something here for 6 months. I think the damage needs to be done in this community for it to be done. And if someone is a situation just like this, why can't they come to the commission and just say, hey, we've got this ordinance that says FEMA will allow us for 6 months, and I live in New Smyrna and I want to stay at my sister's house while they're fixing it. Well, I don't understand why that can't be handled by the commission. Not that I look forward to making decisions like that, but I think making ordinances for one-offs is a mistake.
Just have something in there that allows the commission to discretion upon approval beyond the 28 days, the two weeks time frame. In case of an emergency or anything like that.
I can rewrite it. Well, we can just do first reading and then bring it back to you for first reading next month. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, new business. Acceptance of bid to new City Hall roof. Lee, you want to take it?
I sure do. We have bid publicly through a national advertisement for the installation of a new roof in City Hall. We've discussed this on a number of occasions. The commission is aware of the fact that City Hall has been leaking for a number of years. It's one of those things that always put on the back burner. We have come up with competitive bids for the resurfacing of the roof. The city engineer is here to talk about those two bids. He made the recommendation of low bid he accepted, but if I talk much longer, he won't have anything to talk about.
Good evening, Derek Wayne Scott, Pond Company Engineering. Hold it, close it. Okay. There's not much to say about it. You need a new roof. The bid document was just a list of items that are necessary to replace the roof in its entirety, including the standing metal roof part and the flat part with a couple stumpers and some downspouts. So that's all that was put out. Contractors did ask a few questions that were good questions. I think you got 2 fair bids. The low one is obviously the recommendation. The new roof system, if you have any questions, is the PVC white, goes on, gets heat welded. They put in these hurricane wind suckers so that when the hurricane winds go, it somehow sucks the roof down onto the building instead of flopping in the air. It's kind of interesting. But if you have any questions, I'm glad to answer them.
I actually do. I was wondering about the verbiage, with the allowance of $3,000 to be used at staff's discretion. I would like to see if we can remove that and just allow for change orders.
I don't mind answering that. Being versed in these kind of things. What happens in roofing scenarios, especially in Florida when we have a rainy season like we're currently in, that when they tear open a roof and they find damage and they have to repair that damage, there's prices in there, unit costs, but there are no extended prices. So if they need to go in and replace 8 sheets of plywood, okay, there's a cost in here for each one, but there is no extension of how much. So what they're saying is, and correct me if I'm wrong, it gives them the opportunity to authorize it in the moment to take care of that plywood and continue with the process and not be exposed to weather.
Doesn't a change order allow for the same thing as long as it's below the cutoff?
You're absolutely right. How do you get the change order? It takes time. Rather than being able to instantaneously say, yep, do it, go ahead. So you either trust your person to make that decision and do it, or you don't. And so, until we have another administrator in here, I trust Lee's judgment to go in there, because I'm sure Lee's going to say, hey, Derek, these guys want to replace 20 sheets of plywood. Do you mind taking a look at that for me? And he said, yeah, Lee, they got to go. Okay, change it, rock and roll. Because if he makes a change order and it has to come back to us, how much time is that going to take? So that's why. I mean, I don't like loose ends either, but in this particular situation with roofs, during the rainy season, I see it as being imperative.
What is the standard practice?
I actually had the same issue that you did, and we went over this with my husband in our business, and I said, this doesn't make any sense to me. And he said, no, occasionally they do that with contracts. For that very reason that Rick said, because like I said, I didn't feel comfortable with it at all either. I don't really like the words, the way that they used as, their discretion, but they do it with contracts. So, and that's made me feel more comfortable, because my head almost exploded when I saw it, so, but.
Glad your head didn't explode.
Huh?
Glad your head didn't explode.
That doesn't on a regular basis.
It is common practice on some projects. Roofs are one of those types of projects. I did bring it down from $5,000 to $2,000, and I do need to be able to stand on the roof and say, yes, replace that sheet of plywood, and I'm covered, and I don't have to come back to you for the change order.
So this $3,000 can only be used for an extension of the supplies that are already allocated?
That's correct.
Okay.
So, and if it's not spent, it doesn't get paid out.
Right, you're not able to go and buy some fancy tile with
No.
it, or that helps.
If you look at the roof, it's got fascia board damage. It's quite visible. Some of that's going to have to get replaced. I don't know how much, because we didn't develop plans for it. And that was your city administrator saving the city of Lake Elm money by not paying me to get on the roof and draw plans and put together a good package. We're trying to do this as simply and as cheaply as possible.
And the reason it's as vague as it is it could be plywood, it could be fascia board, you could pull a piece of plywood off and see a broken rafter, and you can't spell all those things out. So you have some additional funding in there so where they can make decisions on the fly.
I'm coming with a very limited construction background, so I appreciate the explanation.
To me, it's too broad just to leave it at staff discretion. It needs to be ironed down to, project-related expense, not just flat-out staff discretion.
As far as I'm concerned, because it talks about it in the verbiage with this particular contract, that's what they're talking about. In other words, they can't go buy pizzas, they can't go buy a new mower for the mower deck, okay? It has to be used for this project.
To me, it doesn't say that.
Well, that may be a legal thing, because, Scott, how do you see that? Because it's written in the verbiage of this particular contract, Does it leave wiggle room to where they can spend the money someplace else?
It would have to be spent for the contract. I mean, it's related, it has to be related to the contract. If you want it more specific than being related to the contract, you got to link it to that. But it can't be unrelated to the contract, it's part of the contract.
And one of the other problems with roofing is if we have to wait for a change order on minor issues like that, like a couple decks of plywood, they're going to demobilize. And then you will get a change order for remobilization and demobilization again. So it is very handy for the inspector to be able to have a little wiggle room on a contract. And this is only for the roof. You can't go by pizzas or anything else. We don't have any other projects going on. So, and for these line items, what the contractor's going to have to do is submit a written request identifying how much, and then I just start subtracting off the total. That is normal. I've done 5 roofs for the UC, and we have these clauses in every one of those contracts.
It really is standard operating procedure. And the number is what, less than, what, 3 to 5% of the total cost of it?
I think the contract is what, 70 something? So $3,000 on
70?
75.
Yeah. So about 5, yeah. Which is not out of line with rules. As a matter of fact, it would not surprise me if it exceeded that.
What we can put in there to make it feel more comfortable is that when some of that 3,000 is spent, it will be reported back to the commission at the next regular scheduled meeting. And because it could, maybe it needs to be approved after the fact, and then that would what I've seen before in contracts is the manager's given the ability to approve change orders up to a certain dollar, without having to go through the formal process. Once it goes through and gets approved, that amount gets reset. So say 1 month they spend $1,000, so they're down to $2,000, and they bring it back to you for approval of what was spent, that $1,000 that was spent. It could be reset, now we're back to the $3,000 that we spent. That's how I've seen them sometimes in cities where there's like a rolling amount that the administrator or manager can spend as long as it goes through the approval process after the fact it gets reset. But we can always bring it back, whether you want to reset it, 3,000 may be enough for the entire project, but we can always bring this, nothing else, bring it back to you so you're notified or aware of what was spent of that 3,000 each month, just to keep you informed of it.
So, okay, I'd like to propose a motion then. An acceptance of the bid with a language change. I don't know how to word it. With the staff can only spend it on this bid, and we'll have to bring it back for approval afterwards, or notification afterwards.
I would say that you award you accept the bid, you award the contract as written with the $3,000 staff allowance, but as that allowance is spent, it will be reported back to the commission at the next regular scheduled meeting.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All right, motion to approve with some additional verbiage as far as reporting of discretionary money is concerned by Commissioner Rutledge and seconded by Commissioner Eckert. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye. 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 Motion passed unanimously. B, the acceptance bid for Mackenzie Road has been pulled. Recommendation. Did we have a conversation there?
Well, it was just my recommendation that you all reject it.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yes, so we only got one bid on the Mackenzie Road project. I was going to question this anyway because I'm not comfortable accepting a bid for something that we only get one bid for. So in taking the Scott's suggestion, I'll look for a motion to reject this bid, and that way we can send it out again.
Motion to reject this bid.
Second.
Motion to reject by Rutledge and seconded by Eckert. If there's no further questions, all those in favor?
I would just want to add, Mayor, that my my understanding that this bid was significantly above the cost estimate.
Oh, I did not
In
know.
addition to being, right, in addition to only being one bid, it was also above our cost estimate.
Okay.
For that, so those are really the two grounds that staff is recommending that we reject the bid. And
Yeah.
They can get into, they're gonna redo the bid somehow to go back.
Gotcha. Gary?
The cost estimate was for one pipe replacement, and the bid was for two pipe replacements and headboards.
So in your opinion, don't have one at this time. The engineering estimate should have been higher, is what you're saying?
No, it should have, the scope changed.
The scope changed. Okay, so let's,
That's the
all
best way to
right.
put it.
No, that's the even better reason to reject the bid and send a new one out. Okay? So, is there a need to amend the motion? No. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Question, Barbara?
Who do we send out the bids to on advertising?
They were sent out through what's called Demand Star. It's a
Demand
national,
Star.
national advertising. Most municipalities, counties use, and contractors therefore don't look out there for projects.
Yeah, I knew a star was in the name, I just didn't know what the first
It's called
star was.
Demand Star. We've used it for a number of years.
All right, item C, recommendation for approval of the special event application for the 2024 festival. I guess that's on the heels of a successful 2023. Discussion?
Need a vote?
He's back.
Did we have a vote on that?
Yes, to reject it.
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
But thank you. Our own room's running.
Do we have a copy of the application for the new request?
Yeah, it should be in your packet. And again, the purpose of this particular approval is to reserve the date.
Get this time slot.
Yeah, we still need to work with the applicant on parking. If you recall last year, parking was a bit of an effort to find it, although everybody obviously found a parking place. But we'd like to have a little less AI next time.
Can we say that we can approve the date and tentatively the festival until you work out the details and can get them to us?
Absolutely. That's the whole purpose, is to approve the activity. That way I can start working with them on the details.
Well, it's not in my packet, so what is the date they're asking?
Can we give staff the authority to reach out and do a little bit more research and bring us back something next month?
I have been penciling in that date, so we're not accepting any other applications, knowing this was going to go to the commission, so I don't know if we're in jeopardy of anybody wanting to come in on that exact date. So I have no problem bringing it back next time. We'll have a better handle on revenue and expenditures here.
We're checking calendars to see what day the,
Yeah,
Okay,
it doesn't conflict with yours.
what day do you have, what's your tentative date, just to make sure?
I'm thinking March 24th. That's just,
24th of Sunday.
What,
that'll be the 23rd and 24th.
and the weekend is,
The 23rd, 24th
Okay,
of
is it
March
the
is
third-
the one,
third
two,
weekend?
three, fourth weekend.
huh?
Fourth
The
weekend.
fourth weekend. Oops,
do you have a conflict?
but I don't know, let me go ahead and get on, because we have our pleasure show to start, and we usually first Saturday of every month, unless something is our barrel shows, and the pleasure shows have been the end of the month. So that would, but, we can always work with that, but let me just go ahead and double check
Well,
the,
there's 5 Saturdays that month.
huh?
There's 5 Saturdays.
There's 5
that month.
Saturdays, oh, okay. All right, so, all right, I don't know what calendar it's going to be, but, okay.
Can we direct staff to work with Betty and make sure that we have a good date and get us a little more information so we can look at this again next month?
Yeah, but I think we can go ahead and tentatively pencil in for that weekend, just so that they can
He's not sure.
get all the paperwork and everything done.
You're not 100%
You
sure what
penciled
the
it,
date
you
is?
authorized me, I'll put it in ink.
I'd like to see that application. If we could just bring it back at next meeting. Stick my teeth in.
There's no urgency in part of the applicant, I know that.
Oh, okay. There's no urgency, bring it back next month.
I mean, I have told them that I've penciled it in, but it's up to the commission to finalize. So they're aware of that, but they haven't told me that they're gonna know by this date that. They expect to be here for the second hand.
Well, in general, I think there's a philosophy that is in agreements, but we're looking for more information, so I'm looking for a motion to table this till next month.
I make that motion to table.
Second.
Move to table and seconded. There's no further discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries. We table till next month. All right, resolution extending a contract with TD Bank. I assume this is boilerplate kind of stuff?
It is, we had previously gone through a selection process, I'm not sure the detail, but the city selected TD Bank as our banker. And that particular contract provided, was for a 5-year term, and it provided for a 5-year extension. The bank would like to extend that contract. We've had no issues with them, so we have no objection to extend.
Make a motion, we accept resolution 2023-03, a resolution of the City Commission, City of Lake Helen, Florida, exercising the option to extend the agreement with TD Bank for 5 years, providing an effective date.
Second question. We need a second.
Can we second it for discussion purposes?
Yes, I'll second.
We have a motion and a second.
I would just like staff to reiterate whether there were changes or not to this contract. Were there any changes to this contract?
Oh, there's no change.
Thank you. That's it.
If there's no further questions, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Vote carries unanimously. All right, this brings us to E, which is the sidewalk debate. And when I first looked at this and I read it again and again, I felt like we were rushing to give staff a tool that they could use, because I know Deb does a great job in permitting, and she has people coming in, and she has people that she has to tell things to. And so getting them the tools that they need to do their job is important. Equally as important is making sure we do the job properly. I'm glad to see Betty O here tonight, because for no other reason, she's my horse person, and I really think that when we look at the sidewalks in this community, we should consider bridle paths first and foremost. We are a horse community. And, you know, we'd be looking to your organization to bring feedback to that. So we not only have bridle paths to consider, we have sidewalks that are in very low density places. We have sidewalks that are in very high density places. I'm not 100% sure that everyone looks at the impermeability of concrete sidewalks. It's not the end all. So this particular ordinance we are taking off the table right now, but we're leaving this line item open for discussion, and probably would best get started by Scott.
Thank you, Commissioner. After our workshop, actually during the workshop, I sent an email to Attorney Chris Rode, who is the attorney who does our special assessments, helped us set up our special assessment. We did the fire special assessment, redoing our stormwater special assessment. He specializes in doing this type of work. Because my concern was, you know, the conversation started evolving from, you know, to the point where it was, why don't we just levy a fee on everybody, collect the money, and then decide where to spend it later, once we did the plan. And I started getting concerned about, are we getting into a tax, or is this an assessment, or is this a fee? And I don't remember, I gave you all like a memo, we did a discussion about that earlier this year. And sometimes some of these things get very blurry when you start crossing the line. So I got an email back from Chris, and he said, yeah, I think this is a fee that could be used as long as you build a sidewalk for the property owner that's paying a fee. I was like, well, that's not what we want to do. We don't want to say we're going to build a sidewalk that's going to benefit your property later. We may collect a fee from a property owner and never build a sidewalk in that area. And so that got me concerned about trying to come up with a fee that we had kind of discussed. So I did some research trying to find what other jurisdictions do. I looked at Deltona because they share some information with me. And I came across a newspaper article out of Tampa. And Tampa had an issue where they had this issue with sidewalks, and developers were getting around building sidewalks, were paying a fee, and they tried to, correct the loopholes that the developers were finding. So I went to Tampa's ordinances, and I found their regulation that they adopted in 2021. So what I decided to do is, just so we can have something to talk about, is I repealed our ordinance regulation, and I put in Tampa's. So what you see here is basically Tampa's, with changes to make it applicable to our situation. And then I took provisions out of our ordinance and inserted that into the ordinance. So this is a merger of our existing regulations and Tampa regulations. And I knew that it was not going to address a lot of stuff we talked about, because I know it still had a per linear foot, and I knew we were going to have to discuss that issue. And after I got the email back, and we got two emails back from Chris Rowe, one dealt with stormwater, one dealt with this issue. We said, let's set a conference call with Chris Rowe and talk about it. And we did that, I believe, Monday. And kind of where it came out of this one, Chris is, I know some cities say we're going to collect the fee and just spend the money, but Chris had a difficult time trying to see where that would fit into existing fees, because when you do an impact fee, you got to show the benefit back to the property you're collecting the impact. And so we actually thought, in talking with Chris and with Lee on the conference call, one option that we sort of recommend, I don't know if the commission would want to do it, is to say, look, nobody has to build a sidewalk. We feel the obligation to build a sidewalk. We are then going to do a study, a plan, a review to come up with what do we want for sidewalks in this community? Where do we want them? And this doesn't apply to subdivisions that have requirements to, if you have a new subdivision, you have to build a sidewalk, that's different. That comes under the subdivision regulations. We're talking about existing lots, which don't have a requirement to build per the subdivision regulations for sidewalk. So one of the options we can do is say, all right, we're not going to require any more sidewalks to be installed. We're going to do an evaluation of plan and come up where do we want the sidewalks, where do we want the horse trails, walking paths. And then as we go down a particular, once that decision is made and we say, all right, we want sidewalks on both sides of this street, the city can then do a special assessment on those property owners and say, you're going to have to pay for the sidewalk. Now, if somebody has a sidewalk, they can be exempt from it, or if they paid money into the sidewalk fund before, they can be exempt from collecting, from doing that. That is a way the city could decide who's going to benefit from these sidewalks we're going to build, which properties, and then those are the areas that we're going to assess it. And you can assess those, you can take years to pay that sidewalk off. You could take 10 years, 15 years as a special assessment to collect the money from those properties that benefit from the installation of the sidewalk. Or the city could always decide we're going to install the sidewalk, we're going to get a grant. We got a grant for a sidewalk, let's use that to pay for the sidewalk and not collect it. When you get into trying to balance what we discussed in that workshop with the way Chris was explaining the various laws of his concern, it got kind of legally murky on the best way to deal with this, because you may have some properties that are on, say if we're just going to do arterial and collector roads, but there are some properties that are on arterial and collector roads that I think during our discussion we were saying, well, they're so big we don't want to make them to put a sidewalk in. And then if you go on the per linear foot basis, then it's going to be a huge cost to those properties. And that wasn't, something that we really wanted. We can obviously say everybody's got to put a sidewalk in, and that's the end of the discussion. No discussion at all. But if we're going to pull back from that and say some people are, some people aren't, some people's going to pay a certain, how much it's going to cost, but we're going to cut larger properties a break because that would be an excessive fee to them. It gets a little legally murky. So one option would be to, what we talked about, we're not going to require anybody to put a sidewalk in unless you're in a subdivision that requires sidewalks. And what we'll do is we're going to do a study, there's a discussion about that, and if we come back, we decide where we're going to put the sidewalks, we'll decide then how we're going to fund it. And one option funding mechanism would be to do a special assessment at that time for the properties that benefit from it. It's no different than when the city decides to extend a sewer line or a water line down a particular street and do assessments on those properties benefiting from that extension. So, but we decided to have put I think Leah put the ordinance out before we had the conference call with Chris. And it was during that conference call with Chris we came up with this alternative suggestion for discussion. We can take the existing ordinance and we can modify it to just do arterial and collectors or a narrower area. But say we're going to establish an average fee to charge everybody, and we're going to hold that money until we come up with a plan to how we're going to build sidewalks. I don't know that would be legally defensible. Question.
Any questions or discussion from the board? Yeah, well,
one thing that I think, one of the questions is we're going to be receiving some applications. We have pending applications that were submitted. I think there's 2 of those pending applications are on our arterial or collector. What do we want to do with those situations?
Yeah, and that's, at the end of reading this, I saw that there was so much work to do, and we don't need to hurry it up, we need to get it right. We need to hear from all the stakeholders, i.e. bridle paths. We need to hear from people on large lots that, do we really need sidewalks on one side of the street or neither? And so this needs to be out in the open air and discussed by the community. Once again, it's clear subdivisions come under a different set of guidelines, and there is no ambiguity in that. But every place else, I don't see where we have to default to, well, let's just put sidewalks everywhere because then it's done and it's easy. And then we're just the same as every place else in the world. I think Lake Helen's special. I think we can take the time to do something special. Now, to answer your question, that's where I got to, Scott, is how do we give staff the tool that they need to deal with stuff that's there currently?
Well, probably the most easily defensible, easiest thing to do is say, bring back an ordinance repealing the obligation to install sidewalks. So going forward, including the applications that are pending, no, the system with the Taylor Choice, we didn't require her to do anything on her sidewalk. So we're not going to require sidewalks right now. And until we come up with a plan on what we want, then it's almost like we have to decide what we want, then we write our ordinance to implement what we want. And it's hard to write an ordinance to implement what we don't know we want. That's, I guess, the difficult thing. And we just can't, I don't think we can go in and adopt an ordinance and say, let's collect money from everybody and put aside a sidewalk pool of funds so we have this money when we decide what we want to do. I don't think we can do that.
Yeah,
So.
this is the old cart and horse thing.
Yeah, and so I think the suggestion would be, is that this, my suggestion, and Lee may have a different one, would be just to bring back an ordinance repealing the obligation to build sidewalks, except on, existing
Subdivisions or commercial property, whichever.
We can maybe have certain exceptions that have to be done, but as a general rule, we're not going to require sidewalks to be installed.
Now, when we do that, if the homeowner decides they want to put them in,
Oh, they can always do it.
right. Lee touched on it earlier, and one of the reasons that I was leaning towards this particular resolution is we just finished a stormwater plan, we finished a potable water plan, and there's millions of dollars worth of pipe and stuff that are supposed to go in the ground in the next 5 to 10 years. And some of that stuff is going to require brand new sidewalks to be torn out if we decide to tell that. So I think postponing exactly what we're going to do with sidewalks is a good idea, because it gives us, one, an opportunity to get feedback, to come up with a plan that will work for everyone or the best we can, and two, it avoids tearing out stuff that may need to come out in order to put pipe in the ground. Anybody else in the commission will weigh in? If not, I have a couple of cards here where people want to talk on this subject. Now, do you want to talk on this general topic, Debbie, or do you want to talk specifically about the project in your HOA?
Specifically.
Okay, can we hold that
Sure.
into the,
Sure.
and Roxanne, same question?
So,
Okay,
yeah.
so we'll hold that until we're done with this and then go back to it, okay? I guess we're looking for direction from the commission to go forward with this thing. I really do think, as much as I don't like repealing work that commissions in the past have done, I think it's the best solution for everybody.
I think we should just leave everything in place until we get some new ordinance.
Leave all the ordinances in place. So what needs to happen then is when someone comes in to pull a permit, that Deb has to tell the people what the old rules say and go forward with that. Even if we know the old rules broken.
It's the best option. We don't have nothing to replace it with. And I don't want to repeal it.
Well, I have a problem with that, because now you've let some people not put in sidewalks, and people have turned in applications at the same time. How are you going to tell them now they're going to put in sidewalks when some didn't have to? I mean, I think that all those people, especially right now, any permits that are open right now should not have to do it, because this was what we voted at the last meeting.
Well, to that point, the applicant came with a special condition. It said that the sidewalk was not, it was impractical, I think was the verbiage that was used. So, and the commission still does have that authority to make those considerations for future applicants. So even the applications that are currently open have that option to come before us.
I'm pretty sure they've already been told they weren't going to have to do it, some of them, by staff. You know? What about Brian?
He's on a local road.
Oh, so you're just, okay. So he doesn't have to anyway. Okay. So the arterial and the...
So,
that's it.
does anyone, Scott Lee, see any agita in Roger's logic?
I'm not sure what Roger's logic is.
Well, basically, Robert says, basically what I heard him say was, just leave everything alone while we were working on this new plan on where to put sidewalks. And then once we've developed this new plan on where to put sidewalks, then we'll, then we can do something different. Did I say that correctly?
They're on a collector on a road, they got to put in the appropriate sidewalk unless there's already one there.
caveat would be for someone who doesn't want to do that, to do the same thing that the last people did.
Yeah, they can petition or pay, they can petition us, the city to negotiate it or to pay fee.
As I recall, we had that conflict in the code where number 1 said it had to be put in all arterials and collectors. Number 5, number 6 said you didn't have to put them.
No, but number 1 said arterial and collector roads, and number 6 said all new construction, commercial, non-commercial, residential, non-residential, new, rehab, had to have a sidewalk. My interpretation, staff had looked at that and said, well, that means everybody has to do it on all roads. I interpreted that to mean to read consistently with arterial and collector to say it doesn't matter what you're building on arterial collector, you got to build it. So it's still an arterial collector. The two issues I would say is, based on my conversation with Chris Rowe, collecting money and potentially spending it the way the ordinance says may not be lawful, even though it's in our current code. We haven't really done that historically, but if we're going to actively do that, if someone challenges it, he was questioning, and I know other jurisdictions have that in their code, but he was questioning, if you're going to collect a fee from somebody, how do you not turn around and give them a benefit by building a sidewalk there? That was his concern about that. That's what happens with collecting the fee. If somebody comes in and says, I want to collect the fee instead of building the sidewalk.
Wouldn't it work the same way as the impact fees that we collect, especially referring to the counties when they collect the road impact fee on a construction done in Lake Helen? They only have to do something for the road that's within like 10 or 20 miles. So, isn't that the same where we're collecting, they're paying into a fee because they don't want to put a sidewalk in and we approve it, that the money would go for a sidewalk somewhere in the city?
What they end up doing is, when you do an impact fee study. And the impact fee study quantifies the benefit to the property along with the cost associated with that benefit. We're not really doing that. We're just saying, you can put the sidewalk in and you pay the cost to put the sidewalk in. You get to spend it wherever. And so I don't know, I understand what you're saying, but there may be zero benefit to that property owner if we go put sidewalks with it. That person's money on the other side of town. There might be zero benefit to that person. Whereas the whole purpose of the impact fee study, which is to say, we're going to collect this fee, and this is the impact that our analysis shows that you do to the road. And so this is the cost we're attributing to you because of the impact you do to the road, so we can expand the road to accommodate. We haven't done that level of a study for sidewalks.
We've got a lot of documentation and studies that have been done by various groups. There's a lot of sidewalks that are not being put in, and that are in those areas where the sidewalks are needed. And
but I'm saying that if you collect a fee from somebody on one end of town, and you spend that money filling gaps and sidewalks on the other end of town, there may be zero benefit to that property.
Well, we find out which sidewalk is as recommended as closest to him.
I'm just saying it's subject to challenge. I'm just saying those are the issues being raised.
And then we never know where his car's going to break down. He wished that there was a sidewalk there for him to stay on too.
Okay, now we're going into cars breaking down and one-offs. What about the person that has 5 acres of land and they really prefer a bridle path in their front yard? According to the code, they've got 400 feet of frontage. At the current rates, I think they're going to have to dump like $20,000 into that fund. So they have nothing in front of their house to show for it. How do you justify that? And is that open to challenge?
It could be open to challenge based on my conversation with Chris Rowe. It certainly can be open to challenge as I discussed. My thinking on it is, look, you're going to spend it one way or another. We can require you to put a sidewalk in. If you're going to spend that money, put the sidewalk in. But you're going to challenge it because there's a fee, okay, then we're not going to approve the fee, you got to put the sidewalk in. But does that really accomplish what the city's trying to attain, is to make somebody put in a 20,000 foot $20,000. It goes to nowhere. It connects to nothing. So I was hoping that we would be able to come out with a citywide fee that we could charge everybody to come up with a sidewalk plan in the core part of the city, possibly, where people could benefit if they drove down and parked and they walked around the parks for shopping or whatever the case may be. But after talking with Chris Rowe, I don't know that we can do that. Because you don't want to do something, when you start looking at, fee versus assessment and versus a tax, we got to be very careful on those things. And I'm just saying that when we talked to the expert on it, he had questions about it. And so I just want to relay those questions. We can keep it the same, but there may be properties on our arterial or collector that, as the Vice Mayor said, are very large, you'll have to pay a big chunk of money. And that was something that was discussed at the workshop, but let's try to avoid that. Now, we can go back to it, but that's fine.
As far as the bridle paths go, that's why there's a section in the ordinance that allows them to come back and petition the commission. And we can say, okay, you put in an approved bridle path instead of a sidewalk. That option is still in there. So any arguments on bridle paths, it's all covered.
Where's the provision on bridle paths?
It's to me, it's covered in a section where the commission can be petitioned to by the resident if he doesn't want to put in a sidewalk, he wants to do something else, and that leaves the choices of either paying into a fee, and if he comes in and says, well, I want to put in a bridle path instead of a sidewalk, and I don't want to pay the fee, say, okay, put in the bridle path, that's fine. That's the options that the commission has on it.
So it's not the bridle path is not specifically addressed. You're just referring that you have that option.
Yeah.
So I see a scenario to where one house has got bridle path in front of it, the next one's got a sidewalk, the next one has a bridle path. I don't think that is a plan that we're making for the city. I think we need to make the plan and have people follow the plan. That's why I thought someone like Betty-O would be useful in helping us determine where are the best places in the community to run bridle paths, because as far as I'm concerned, that means no sidewalks are going in that particular area. And maybe when you do that, the opposite side of the street can be done. When you talk about arterial or collectors, those may wind up being high traffic areas, and we may very well want sidewalks on both sides of the street because there's safety reasons, there's functionality reasons. So in my opinion, I think there's just more work needs to be done. And I don't think it's fair. I really don't think it's fair to have somebody pay $20,000 into a sidewalk fund and get no benefit from it. I just don't see that. I see that as being challenged. I think somebody would come in and say, no, wait a damn minute. And so I don't want to set something up to where it just causes headaches for us. So going to your suggestion, which is saying, okay, we don't have to worry about subdivisions, they're taken care of. We don't have to worry about commercial, they're taken care of. The only thing we really have to deal with are those places where new houses are being built on areas that don't have sidewalks. And if we just repeal the ordinance and do nothing until we can completely finish what we're looking at in the city and take the time to do the job properly, and then finding the funding mechanism for it, I don't see why that can't be a reasonable alternative.
Then I don't want to pay my stormwater fee anymore, since the stormwater fee does not affect my property and have anything to do with me. How's that sound?
Mostly argumentative, because stormwater is universal. We don't control the rain, we don't control the stormwater, we try to control it. So that's apples and oranges.
Mr. Mayor, could I, when I first got into this particular subject, we were talking about a particular home that for some reason didn't think they had to put a sidewalk down. The entire discussion revolved around whether or not they would notify the banks and put a sidewalk in, et cetera, et cetera. And as we got into the last workshop, it became obvious to me, and I think everybody else, much more involved discussion is necessary as to what you put where, why, in a coordinated fashion with your neighbors. So you're having a pathway, either for horses or people. If you read the ordinance, it's very, in my opinion, very heavy-handed. It says basically you will put in a sidewalk. Now it's limited to arterial and collector, but originally it was you will put in a sidewalk, period. And eventually the whole city's going to have a sidewalk. We don't care what you think about this. It just allowed for no individual discretion on part of the organization, the community, to come together, discuss what they wanted to do and how they wanted to do it. Assessments do give you, one of the big discussions at our last meeting, this had to do with the High and Main Street location, was the cost. $13,000 estimated cost. Assessments allow you to pay costs over 20 years. Doesn't have to be paid if you sell the house in 10 years, doesn't have to be paid off. Cost goes on to the next owner of the property. Modest, because it's tax-free, modest interest rates. So it really is, number one, you have a chance if you just back off the mandatory and let us discuss how we're going to do it on a block by block or by area basis, what the residents in that area want to do, and then the funding would be by an assessment process and spread that cost over up to 20 years. Much more palatable for people. Not everybody in the community can afford $13,000 for a sidewalk. It just gets to be a large number. So I guess what I'm advocating is instead of a heavy-handed approach, now if you back off and say no more sidewalks are being mandatorily required, you can put them in if you want, but you don't have to. It doesn't maintain that we're going to have to go back to the plan to eventually facilitate whatever the residents in that particular area want to do with a separate financial mechanism rather than the builder just writing a check at the time of the purchase of the property. To me, it's a much more civilized, rational way to do it on a long-term basis to fill in all the spaces. I think what we discovered in our phone conversations is that it is not easily solved problem in terms of financing. It's not easily solved problem in terms of where you put them. You stop to think the only places right now where you're putting this is on roads that by definition are high-speed, high-density traffic roads. And is that really where you want to put a sidewalk? I can tell you from experience, I have attempted to walk on sidewalks next to those roads, and you only do it once, trust me. And then trucks go by you at 40 miles an hour, and all you can think of is what happens if, you don't want to encourage people to be walking on high-density roads, traffic roads. You want to encourage them to be in other areas where they're, yes, you can walk in your street, but there's a sidewalk provider if you want to. Bridle paths, I think, are a really neat addition to a community like ours. We want to be individualistic, we have a history of the rural atmosphere and culture, and that's what we consider right now. Roger believes it is by interpretation allowed. I don't know that anybody's ever thought about it, they should be doing it. But it's something that we need to discuss. I mean, we being the commission, the staff, with the citizens, what do you really want in your neighborhood? Some of them are predetermined by the development orders of two subdivisions, but I think there's a wide open discussion as we go with the residents about what do you want in front of your house and why do you want it. It's not an easy topic to do simply by saying, let's leave it the way it is. That's from your city plan.
Do either of you ladies like to weigh in? No? Ms. Braska, do you have anything new to add?
Yes.
Kelly Frasca, 616 John Street. Thank you.
So my question is, we're talking about holding on until we come up with a plan. And we have roads with existing sidewalks, and when houses, new builds are being put onto those roads, why would we hold off on implementing the sidewalks if there are already existing sidewalks on that road?
Is that a question?
Yeah, that is. I'll give you the other half. I'll tell you all the questions. On county roads, the county is responsible for sidewalks, am I correct? On county roads?
For maintenance.
Just for maintenance?
Yeah, like if you're referring to Pravat?
Pravat, Ohio, Summit, New York, Lakeview, those are all county roads. Can't we get into an agreement, open up discussion with the county so that way we're not putting the entire bill if you're going to put sidewalks on those roads that don't exist?
Yeah, I think that's all part of the discussion on figuring out exactly what we want to do for sidewalks in the community.
And then those that don't have existing sidewalks, those I can see that we're holding off until we have that discussion. But those roads that have existing sidewalks, I don't see why we hold off because they obviously have one.
Once again, that's an owner. Let's just say you're on an infill lot and you're going to build a house. And you have a house to your left that's got a sidewalk that stops right next to you, and a house to your right, the sidewalk stops right next to you. I would think any homeowner would want to just go ahead and pay for it and put it in.
Yeah.
That would also make them exempt at some point when we decide to fund something because their particular street would not need it.
Okay, so that's not within the holding of, withholding until we figure it out, correct?
Withholding, are you talking about?
Withholding on maybe to put in sidewalks.
No,
sidewalks.
that's what we're saying is if a homeowner wants to put the sidewalk in, we're not going to stop them. That's their prerogative.
I think trying to work with county would be a great way.
Yeah, that's all part of the equation, and one of the reasons why we can't give you a fast answer to exactly where we want everything that we want. This is going to take time because there's a lot of stakeholders involved in this, and county's just one of them.
Is that sidewalk map the one? Did Derek already complete that? Was that something you said, or it's hard for me to understand? Is that available?
Yeah. The sidewalk map?
Yeah, it wasn't the drawn one, right?
Yeah. Of course. Anything we have is available.
I'll get with you to get a copy of that. Thank you.
Can I just ask a question?
Miss Ware, come on up.
You just gave a great, or somebody, one of you did, the sidewalk to the left, the sidewalk to the right, you're building a house. What if they didn't want to build a sidewalk? Aesthetically, you would want them to, I would think, because you would want to keep it nice and clean.
Perfect opportunity to exercise our right to go in and say, okay, we want a sidewalk in there, we could assess that particular person to do it.
So if they said, well, I don't want to spend the 10 grand, you would say?
Okay, we will, we're going to assess it, and then you can pay it over time.
Okay.
But
It would be probably if we came back and said, did you plan and say, okay, we're going to go through and we're going to fill in these gaps on this street, because that's the street we're going to finish up. Then each property owner that doesn't have a sidewalk would be assessed at that time for putting the sidewalk in on their property that they didn't put in.
So, say on a random road, like not in an HOA, but on Park Street, and you have a vacant lot, and somebody buys and says, we want to build a house. I don't even know if Park Street has sidewalks, but just say you have one to the left and one to the right. Would that new construction be required to put a sidewalk in to meet the other two next to them?
It's not required now.
I'm sorry,
It's not required now.
isn't it?
no, right now, they can either pay into a fund or put the sidewalk in.
It has to be on a collector or alternate.
No, but yeah.
Yeah, even if the ones next to them, the residents next to them don't have, or have them, it's not required?
That's the way I understand it.
The code currently reads that it's only required on collector and alternate.
Okay, I need a little bit of definitions of that, because that, to me, visually, that would be off.
Now, we may come back later and say, okay, we want to finish up this street, and with the plan, we need to fill in these holes, we're going to assess each one of these property owners the cost of installing the sidewalk on that, which we can plan. A year after they finish construction, 2 years after they finish construction, but it would need to be done on a street by And then, so in essence, they ultimately could pay for it. They could pay for it when they build it on their own voluntarily, or if this commission decides to go in and fill in the gaps themselves at some point in the future by special assessment by the city.
I believe when this original ordinance was written was back in the 1880s, somewhere along that line. You can make the argument then that sidewalks were very unique and prestigious, and they wanted that in any downtown city application because the world was a bridle path. The world's not the same anymore. The world is mostly paved, and now we need to consider, okay, do we want bridle paths?
And the bike paths, like we've talked about.
Yes, exactly.
Bobby?
Bob Morales, city's historic design consultant. I'm surprised to hear that we would allow that with adjacencies straddling a new house, and that there's an option not to build the side. It really surprises me because it goes against other ordinances and cities that I've been involved in working on.
But that's what the current one says, okay.
But first of all, are the sidewalks really on their property, or is it on easement, government, city easement? Because we keep saying the property, that's not accurate. The sidewalks are not on their property.
It's an easement.
Right, okay. So with that type of thought there, then I should have a choice whether to put a concrete apron from my drive or not. Are we making homeowners put a concrete apron as an extension of their driveway to connect to the street? Is that a requirement?
I know that's similar, but I think it's a tangent to what we're talking about right now, and so I'm really going to disregard that at this point. I understand what you're saying.
I just want to raise the question because...
No, I agree with you. For me, I would do it. For me, I would put a sidewalk in if I was in a smaller acreage subdivision that there is a function there that's needed. As a homeowner, I do it. As a builder, I would do it. So my answer to you with that for me personally is I would say, yes, I would do that. What we have in the books. And so what we're trying to say right now is currently what we have in the books is a mess. And we need to fix it, and we need to do something until then. And I think that the smartest thing is not, sometimes you're given choices and none of them are any good, okay? And I think you have to pick the best of the worst. And I think that's what we're doing here with this. And I think the best of the worst of this today's scenario is like, you don't want to put them in, don't put them in. When we decide exactly what we want to do in the community, and it could take a year or so before we, hear from all the stakeholders and really get comfortable with exactly what we want to do, and then we can say definitively, okay, we got a plan. This is what we want to do. Here's where we want to do it. Here's where we don't. Here's where we want bridle paths. Here's where we want two sides of the street. Here where we want one side of the street, and we can map out the whole city.
I think you're heading in the right direction. It's wonderful to see it that's on the radar. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. If there's no more discussion on this, and I think we beat it up pretty good, I'd like a motion to either continue to do business the way we have, or suspend this. What was your verbiage, Scott, that you said about?
Basically, what we're going to do is, one option would be to come back with an ordinance, repealing the obligation to construct sidewalks with certain exceptions.
Okay. So it's either do business as usual or come back with an ordinance that repeals it.
With certain exceptions.
With certain exceptions.
And there could be exceptions, obviously we talked about the subdivision exception. We could also come back and say if there is a sidewalk on either side of you, you have to put it in, no exception. You can put that in.
Yeah.
Right now, we don't even require that in our current code.
Right.
So you could say, tighten up, the ordinance before you basically says, put them everywhere. Wherever you go, you put in a sidewalk. Unless you meet certain criteria, then you can pay a fee. But that payment of the fee part is where the question is, and I went back and I read the email I got from Chris Rowe where he said, you yeah, you can collect a fee as long as you ultimately spend the money, put it in the sidewalk, that problem. So
That's murky.
that's where we're starting to, that issue, and then some of the big properties, we really want them paying, and there's concern about having them pay a huge fee because there's so much street frontage. So, and trying to come up with something that fits that is challenging. So we can either stick with what we have, or direct us to come back with an ordinance that removes the obligation to build sidewalks except under certain circumstances. What we talk about.
Can we put a sunset clause in that, which would, even if it's 2, 3, 4 years down the road, which forces us to make sure that we do the work, or else we're just going to revert back to the same one?
Well, usually what happens with the sunset clause is you sunset the regulation.
Right.
I don't know that it reestablishes the old regulations. You know,
Okay.
you put in a law that says, okay, this law is going to be effective for a certain period of time, then it sunsets.
Gotcha.
I don't know that that automatically resets the prior law because we repealed that law with this law.
Gotcha.
And you got to go through an ordinance process to do that. You can say a law becomes invalid after a certain period of time, sunsets, but I don't know that that will all automatically resurrect the prior law without going through the ordinance adoption process to resurrect it. But I can check that.
Rick?
I'm sorry, Derek?
Evening again. Derek points out at the end of the day, staff needs a better ordinance. And I think we can get there. I misinterpreted the rule, or excuse me, I interpret the rule differently than our attorney. And if we can come back next month with some cleanups to the existing rule, so that staff has better direction to get to our residents or building on. I just want to make sure that that's clear between at least the two of us. Because I read number 6 says you must put it aside.
Yeah. Are you telling me that you can go back with an ordinance next month that will solve the myriad of problems that we have with the one we currently have?
The problem, no, I'm not saying that, but
Okay.
I can fix staff's directions to the builders.
Okay.
By eliminating some verbiage or rearranging some words. The intent of the ordinance would remain the same as it is. Commercial corridors, they still have to put sidewalks in. But we're getting to the point now where I read that one line, and I'm telling a guy on a dirt road, he's got to put in a sidewalk and come here and pay for a fund. And that doesn't make a lot of sense at all.
Right.
But if we can get rid of that snafu.
Yeah. What do you think, Scott?
I mean, I interpret it, I would say how I interpreted it.
Mhm.
I think we only require sidewalks on collector and arterial roads. You know, but we can clear that up, but the ordinance I brought back is a little bit broader, so it's simpler to say, all right,
Yeah, but
we can curl it down.
yeah, even if that is the bridge between where Roger is and where I am, and it gives us a tool so staff can continue to operate, okay, until we do finish our sidewalk plan and we do have a funding mechanism. I would be in favor of that.
That would help us because Deb and I are not going to be here for the rest of our lives.
Right.
And the next replacements are not going to have the benefit of these conversations and the history and the direction.
What we could do is we could take some of the language that, Tampa had some criteria, like the idea of what do you look for if somebody's going to pay a fee? What do you look at to see whether or not you're going to allow that fee to be paid? Tampa has some criteria to look at. It's not super duper specific, but it helps, and so we can maybe incorporate that into it as well. Or we can take the Tampa one and add arterial collectors only to it and work from the ordinance I've prepared. I can work with them on it. come back with something, whatever the staff thinks is the best way to go.
In my mind, it's just a few little X's and L's. And you guys vote on the minor changes, and then we work on an overall plan, funding where we want them, where why.
Is that satisfactory, Roger? Does that make sense?
I've always been in favor of them adjusting the ordinance to meet our new requirements. I don't want to get rid of what we currently have in the meantime between now and then. You want to get rid of everything, wipe the slate clean, and start fresh and new.
Correct.
Okay. Mine is keep what we got there while they work on the new one to replace it.
Well, and that's why I'm asking you this. I think this is a bridge, and I guess, you know, you're happy with what they did in 1888, and I'm in 2018. So I still need a motion on direction.
Mr. Mayor, can I just mention, we do have a house of permit that's going up. And right now, by any interpretation, they have to have a sidewalk. They have a road along the side, not on permit. But the estimate is 600 feet of sidewalk that will be installed basically in a dirt road that makes it very hard to justify under any criteria. That's the kind of situation the staff is going to face in the next month.
I think if I was staff, what I would do is I would tell them, look, we think this is absurd, and probably the commission will think this is absurd as well, and I think the word is not practical. And we could come in and do the same thing as we did the last time. And I think that's what Roger's saying about having the one in place. We can continue to tell people that they don't necessarily need to do something. But I do like tweaking what we have, so we've got a working tool while we're moving forward.
You're talking about East Pennsylvania and Pearl? Oh, Lake Pearl? Okay. Well, I know East Pennsylvania is also a dirt road. That's what I was asking.
I'll take the boss to say good evening. Enjoy being here. Y'all have a great night.
Thank you, Derek.
Make a motion to leave our current ordinance in place and staff to use it as a guideline to adjust it and bring us back a new ordinance to replace it.
We need a second.
Would you restate that? You want to keep the same
Ordinance as it is current. And use that as a basis to rework our ordinance and come back to it.
Roger, why don't you change that word to modify? I want to modify the current ordinance.
Yes.
Okay, now second.
Yes, to modify the current ordinance to update it.
Can I ask, do you still want to have the authority to waive, if it's not practical, the payment of the fee or the sidewalk? Or would you?
I'm going to speak for-
limit it down to, you build the sidewalk or you pay the fee?
I'm in the arena where hopefully these will be not more than one-offs. I know this one's probably going to come into us, but with that said, I would like the flexibility to be able to look at each situation that's like that and say, yeah, that's impractical, but let...
The commission discretion left in it.
Yes, it's a good tool.
So you can either waive it all together or say, no, we're not going to let you off the hook entirely, you still have to pay a fee.
Well,
That's really what I'm asking.
and as far as I'm concerned, I don't necessarily think you have to pay a fee today, because if they're in a situation where we deem it's impractical, and then 10, 15 years down the road, the size of this community changes, and we now desire a sidewalk there, I don't want those people who are going to benefit from it not to be part of the funding mechanism to put it in at a later date. But I don't necessarily think they need to pay for it at that time. Especially the larger lots. The smaller lots are not nearly as cost prohibitive, but the larger lots, they are.
And I think also, I think the discussion went in the way of, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
think that we were in agreement too amongst us about taking out any verbiage or ambiguity about collector and arterial and not have sidewalks everywhere. So maybe clean up that language as well.
So you want to limit it to collectors and arterials only?
For now.
Okay.
Until we have a more solid plan, because we don't want it to be interpreted the way Derek was saying and have sidewalks on a dirt road.
Right, okay.
Okay, and the provision about it being continuous, if there's one on one side and one on the other, have it be continuous.
Okay, and in talking with Lee's example that he gave, and just talking to them, I would probably also say that any frontage on a dirt road doesn't count. Towards calculating where you're going to put the sidewalk. So I guess this particular property has some land on for that, but then has a property line going along the dirt road. And so we would only look at the paved portion of that, not the dirt.
Give it the residents to have to work that out.
Yeah,
Present it to us.
right, no problem.
Oh, well, I think we worked through that pretty well. Yeah, we have a motion and a second, and call for the question. Zone 1?
Yes.
Zone 2?
Yes.
Zone 3? Okay, Zone 4? And I'll say yes. Motion approved, unanimous. Okay, now I would like to talk about, there is a specific sidewalk issue in the, I can never remember the name of that subdivision. The Woods of Lake Helen, thank you. Cut down the trees and they call it the woods. Okay, let's see.
Not all the trees.
Not all of them. Both Roxanne and Debbie, whichever one of you wants to speak first or second or together. Well, I'm sorry, I've been laxed on that.
I am the HOA board president for the Woods of Lake Helen subdivision.
I'm Debbie Ritchie, 310 West Michigan. I'm also on the board. We're both here just to speak on behalf of the Woods of Lake Helen, all 104 residents in the Woods of Lake Helen. So I'll let Roxanne, as our president, I'll let her mainly speak. If I need to add on, I will if that's okay.
So our goal tonight is to recap an issue that has occurred within the subdivision in regards to sidewalks. A permit was given by the city to a builder / homeowner for a hole in the width which allowed a sidewalk to be put in the drainage easement. We brought this to the attention of the city administrator, to which he went out with himself and the city engineer and responded to us on May 4th, stating that the sidewalk was not built in the sidewalk easement. The sidewalk was moved.
Is it on?
Yeah, we can't hear. Sorry. The sidewalk was moved south of the sidewalk easement, with most of the walk now in the drainage easement. Sidewalks are not allowed in the drainage easements. We also noted that the drain field encroached almost completely into the sidewalk. So the city acknowledged that the sidewalk was in the drainage easement and the sidewalks are not allowed in the drainage easement. But since the HOA is responsible for the maintenance of sidewalks and stormwater, the HOA and homeowner must resolve this issue, which we attempted to do. We also asked, actually the next day I asked, what is the status of the CO for this home? Since you're aware of this issue, we're aware of this issue, we're going to be working on it.
Can you speak up, please?
We also asked what would be the status of the CO in regards to this home, since we were aware of the issue, the city was aware of the issue, and now we're now going to be working to resolve it. And in an email the next day on May 5th, Lee said that they discussed the matter with the chief building officer who would normally approve the CO. And he states issuance of a permit requires not only the completion of the structure in accordance with Florida Building Corporation. So we will hold up the CO pending his approval. In this case, that means that we're waiting on your approval. So we move forward a couple of weeks. We must continue to be in communication with the city, let them know where we are. And we had conversations with the homeowner homeowner, we let them know the status of those. So we have responsibility when the sidewalks are built, but have nothing to do with the permitting or approval process. So we trust the city is going to follow the design and easements that were put in place 20 years ago. We still don't have an explanation as to why these sidewalks were placed in the drainage easement, but in an email received from the city earlier this week, and I quote, "The location of the sidewalk is an HOA issue." We're now in a no-win situation. At the end of the day, the city granted this permit on these easements. So, and this has to be corrected. We have to move the sidewalks because they are in the drainage easement. This could cause future liability or future issues, and we're now looking to the city to help us remedy this issue.
Did you want to say anything, Debbie, at this time? Do you want me to just bring you up to speed with what I know, because since speaking to you, right?
I would say go ahead. I mean, our biggest issue here is the city's actions here, which I'm not sure why. We have not got an explanation as to why it was allowed for the sidewalk to be put in the drainage easement. Still have not given that explanation. And why the city's actions now become our problem that we can't solve. And it puts us in a dilemma. We're here representing 104 homeowners in the woods of Lake Helen, and it's our responsibility to protect those homeowners. But our hands are tied. So we're in quite a dilemma.
I see two issues. Okay? And one is process. Because to me, with any problem, if we can figure out what the process needs to be so it doesn't happen again, and so to me that's the paramount. The second one is look at what's there and what are the issues with it. It's beyond it. In other words, if the city created a new easement that put the sidewalk in that, in other words, move the easement for the sidewalk to incorporate what's there, it would then be in the easement and there wouldn't be that legal issue. I've talked to several city engineer, I've talked with the city attorney, I've talked to Mark, the building inspector. It does not, St. Johns River does not have an issue with it, so it's not a function of the drainage that's an issue. Structurally, it's not an issue. The multiple people, the engineer that was just here signed off on it.
St. John's.
St. John's. I didn't speak to St. John's, but I did speak to the building inspector who said that St. John's signed off on it. Okay, so if there's a aesthetic component that needs to be addressed, from what I understand, there are some modifications that can be made rather than, because what I don't like about it is most of the places when you go down Pennsylvania that people deviated from the path to go around a storm drain or to go around a telephone pole. They did it in a curving manner rather than these blunt corners. And I think the homeowner is receptive to fixing that so it's more appealing to the eye. But I'm more concerned with how we go forward so that everyone that lives in that community and the members of the HOA are satisfied with the end product. Not necessarily this one, because I don't think there's a solution here that's going to make everyone happy. So I think the best thing that we can do is find that compromise, and I think the compromise is have the homeowner put it in so where it's more appealing to the eye, fix that corner where that's sharp 90-degree bend is, have the city draw up an easement which puts the sidewalk in the sidewalk easement, just moves it, and I think that's probably the best fix for there.
You don't see an issue with the sidewalk and the drainage easement?
If you look at this DOT roadway and design drainage, there literally is structures that they use where stormwater literally goes through the sidewalk and there's a flume cavity that allows it to go through. So that's not unusual. So as long as St. John signs off on it and they're happy with the ability to do the drainage, and if that's in question, then we'll find out for sure, because
Because I think as far as liability,
Mhm.
if we don't know what might happen down the road.
Sure.
I would like for that to be written.
Sure, I don't blame you.
Everything, I don't think they came out and looked.
Mhm.
We just want to make sure from liability perspective,
I don't
there's
blame
not
you.
a problem down the road.
I don't blame you.
Liability and consistency, because that's the only home that the
Yeah.
sidewalk is.
Well,
And the sidewalk, I guess my question is, why was the sidewalk put way out there?
Well,
Was
I
there a
think
reason?
yeah, go ahead.
It is my understanding the city did not permit the sidewalk there. That was not approved by the city. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I believe what happened is there's a sidewalk easement there, and the sidewalk easement is 10 foot. So when we say the location, we don't say it has to be in a particular place within that 10 foot easement. It needs to be within that 10 foot easement, wherever it happens to go within that 10 foot easement. The homeowner got a septic tank permit, and the drain field is in the front of the yard, is my understanding, and the county regulations prohibit the sidewalk from being on top of the drain field.
Yeah.
So the property owner relocated the sidewalk and mismeasured where he thought the sidewalk easement was at. So my understanding where he measured from, he mismeasured, is what I understand. And it was done on a Saturday, not with a permit from the city. The city didn't approve the location of that sidewalk. And that's where I think what needs to be, one of the things that needs to be done is the easement needs to be where the sidewalk is. Wherever it's ultimately going to be at, we need to make sure it's in the easement for not only property owner's protection, but also
So
protection.
you're saying now move the easement to where he put the sidewalk?
Correct.
And do you do that for every other home?
Right, so
Why are we
anyone,
making this a special
No,
circumstance?
this is a situation where it sounds like, we would have to have done this because the drain field went into the sidewalk easement. So we could not have put the sidewalk in the sidewalk easement because of the drain field. That's my understanding, looking at the county records, the staff looked at the county records.
You ended up, or the owner ended up putting the sidewalk easement in, the sidewalk in the drainage easement anyway. Is that what you're talking about, the
The
mismeasurement?
storm drain, I'm talking about.
The drain field, sorry.
He
Yeah, the drain
he
field.
didn't put it in the
Drain
drain
field.
field, he moved it outside the drain field, but by doing that, and there was some mismeasurement issue, maybe Lee can explain it better. He thought he was putting it still in the sidewalk easement from where he measured, but he didn't. He put it outside the sidewalk easement into the storm drain easement. So there's, you got the storm drain easement, then you got a sidewalk easement, then you also have the drain field, the septic tank drain field. So you got all these different things we got to kind of put this in there. And that's what I think, my understanding of what happened. And he didn't come to the city and say, this is where I'm going to put the sidewalk.
You didn't get permission to put it where it is?
Not to my knowledge, it came in on a Saturday, and he put it in, and not with a permit from us, is that correct? Correct. So we didn't authorize him to put the sidewalk outside the sidewalk easement. That was not authorization.
okay.
So we're just trying to figure out a way
All right,
to.
we didn't realize, we
Yeah,
assumed that was never addressed.
So we went through the approval process, and I'm being told, the sidewalk either wasn't shown on the plans or was not shown where it currently is, for sure. So that's my understanding.
Right. Right.
It was not shown at all, but you have a sidewalk easement, so the sidewalk ultimately needs to be within that easement. And it's a 10-foot easement, sidewalk's 5 foot, so. Within that easement, you can put it. There was a measurement issue, he had to shift it away from the drain field, get it out of there. There was a measurement miscalculation, however, it was calculated incorrectly. And he thought he was putting it in the drain, in the sidewalk easement, but it ended up being outside the sidewalk. So for sure, one of the corrections needs to be, the sidewalk easement needs to be redrawn so it is in the sidewalk easement. We need a new sidewalk easement. And then I think part of it was, you correctly read what Lee talked to our chief building official, Mark, and what Lee relayed to you, Roxanne, about, Mark says that they got to comply with everything, he's got to build a sidewalk because it's required by code. And y'all need to work out the exact location of that. And so we actually got from the builder, the homeowner, an email from y'all's attorney, kind of saying it looks like it worked out. It said, you know, the board believes that the proposal may be a workable solution. The board requests you smooth out the edges adjacent to your two neighbors. The goal is to have a continuous flowing path rather than the jogging effect. You may also have to jog the sidewalk up slightly on the ends to make them align appropriately. Let me know if you have any further questions. So I think Mark kind of took that and it looked like y'all came to some type of a solution because there was a drawing submitted by the property. So I think that had something to do with it too, because that we said as soon as y'all could work this out. So I think that had some influence over how that goes. But ultimately, you know, we've talked about it before, but chief building officials want to decide on these things. You know, this goes through the chief building official. He handles issuance of approval permits, issuance of COs, per our code, per state law. He's not involved in that process. The issuance of COs, you really don't want your administrator involved in being able to.
But he relayed this to him.
No, he wasn't aware of this.
What's that?
This was given to our permitting staff and gave it to our chief building official.
Okay.
He was not, did not receive this until after the issue came up about, and he found out there was a CO issue, and he said, and then he received a copy of this letter. So that's kind of the timing. Okay. So the permitting process doesn't go through our administrator's office at all. Okay. And you really don't want that because you know, the chief building official has licenses and certifications. He's got to follow state law, and you don't want anybody in the city interfering with him doing his job. And our code says that. The chief building official makes all these decisions. And early in the email process, about talking about this, I told Lee, I said, look, if you look at these sections of the code, these are all decisions being made by chief building official. Just send them out. You don't need to be involved in making these decisions about where the sidewalk is. That's the chief building official. So, what I think needs to be done is whatever, and I don't know if it was actually formally approved or whatever was discussed, work out these smoothing of the edges things. But to me, legally, I think the most important thing is get a new sidewalk easement for where that sidewalk is.
So that's what you were suggesting?
Yeah, that really needs, that I think needs to be done. Just on a legal perspective.
Well, that would have to be done if the sidewalk stays there. Right, yeah, that's what our attorney's already said.
Yeah, you gotta get an easement to address
It's one of the two. If the sidewalk stays there, the easement has to be moved. If the easement stays there, the sidewalk has to be moved, legally.
And I don't know if the sidewalk can be moved because of the drain field.
Well, then the drain field would have to be moved.
I don't know. That might not be possible. But you get into things I have no idea.
I do know that drain fields have just gotten larger and larger and larger as time goes by. And it's amazing the amount of space they gobble up. And there's a somewhat of a disconnect that I've seen because I've put a couple of them in the last few years between what the guidelines are, because with the health department who provide those guidelines for septic tank and drain fields, they give you square footage. Well, 1,000 square feet could be 10 by 100. Right. You know, it could be 20 by 25. You know, and so
you account for that in the construction of the
yes, you should. But then you have a third-party installer that comes in and puts it in, and they're looking at some conditions, and they, you know, so you would like to think everything's perfectly coordinated, but it's not.
Well, one other thing that I didn't understand from the start is the original. I don't know if it was original because it changed, but the plans that I believe the HOA had gotten showed a walkway going from the driveway to the front doorsteps, which, where the drain field is now, would have gone right over the drain field. So was that drain field planned to go there the whole time? Because that sidewalk couldn't have been there.
Yeah.
That walkway couldn't have been there.
It's hard to know that because once again, when I have, in other words, you look at a site plan, or what I'm going to call a residential site plan, and you show the location of your septic tank, and it's a little square on it, you know? Yeah. And then when you go to submit, you give those plans to the health department, and they go do some perk tests, and they come out and say, okay, how many bathrooms, how many fixtures do you have, this is what size tank you need, this is what size drain field. they don't tell you it needs to be 10 by 100 or 20 by 25. And so at that point, does the city require that the contractor go back once they determine from the subcontractor where it all goes to what the size of it is? Now, some of those things just get adjusted by the lowest paid guy on the totem pole, unfortunately, and some things are tight. So I'd like to give Mr. Winters an opportunity to have a conversation. He's been patient, he's been listening, and so I'd like to hear if he has anything to add. Thank you, David.
Hello, thanks for hearing us. I'm David Winters. I'm the property owner. We're having this discussion about, and I think it was somewhat fragmented what they presented. I don't think they presented the fact that we did meet at the lot. We did discuss the sidewalk after it was poured. It had been formed up for a week prior to, and the very next morning that we poured it, is when it was brought to our attention. It was checked. I did not do any of this malicious work. Went to the city, had a conversation, a little bit confused on where I could put it. This is how I interpret it, how do y'all interpret it. Mark, the building inspector, was included in that conversation. We had several of them before we made these moves. The board came over, we met at the house, we had conversations. A lot of the conversations that you're hearing so far have been reasonably accurate. I'm leaving out the part that I've given them drawings of what would be a proposed solution. Prior to that, they insinuated that if St. John's River was okay with it, then it would be fine because it's in the drainage easement, the St. John's River drainage easement. I went to St. John's River, they had no problem with it. They sent a letter documenting this, they had no problem with it. It had some language in there that said, so long as it did not disrupt the flow of the water upstream, then it would be fine. Gave that to the HOA, who they turned over to the attorney. And at that time, I was tasked with bringing an engineer involved to make sure it would not disrupt the flow upstream. Got that letter to them, and they said at that point they'll keep it in consideration. They kept giving me challenges, seemingly knowing they were going to make me anyway. The very interesting thing about this is I went and had a conversation about this because there's no direct line on the street. The first two houses at the west end of West Pennsylvania in Summit are the only two sidewalks that are totally compliant on the street. So for them to, per se, single me out is somewhat ludicrous. The houses on either side of me are in the easement. The first house on the other side of Volusia is equally in the easement. All the sidewalks on Pennsylvania are in the easement, except for the first two. They know about it. They did nothing about it. I called it to their attention and said, this is how it happened. I've given drawings for resolution. The letter he just read out is accurate. And if you listen to the verbiage of what he said, as you bring your sidewalk up to and meet the adjoining sidewalks, it's a workable solution. For whatever reason, all of a sudden, it's not a workable resolution. I have all the emails, all the text strings, I have the drawings from the letter submitted to them, and they need to understand that if I were to push that thing up and had this conversation with Roxanne, 20 feet from the road is where it goes. The guy to my left, car to the east of me, 17 feet off the road.
The guy to my west, 18.6. There'll be a disconnect of 3 feet on the east, but half on the west. I don't think you people understand what you're asking for. So, with total clarity, I've done everything I can do to make these folks happy. They just don't want to work with me. I would say, love hearing what you guys have to say, and appreciate your support.
Yeah, I just like I said when I first started this, there's 2 issues. One is a process issue, and if I was any advice to the HOA, it would be you can, from the time you form concrete, you need to give us, give us 72 hours so we can come and take a look, blah, 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 blah. And that way you can make sure, because on the government side of it, on our side of it, there's not a structural issue, there's not a civil issue, there's not a drainage issue, so it's purely a, and there's not a safety issue. So it's purely an aesthetic and an easement issue. And I don't know that everything, I'm assuming everything Mr. Winters just told me is mostly true. I mean, ideally what I would like, because I really do think, on looking at all the evidence, that the solution to your problem is a negotiation with the HOA to where everybody can get happy with the solution. But I also think on the HOA side that as much as you want to think that it's the city's responsibility to make sure that something is where it is, one of the things we are working on is we're requiring every home that's built have what we're calling a residential site plan, and we're going to make sure that wherever sidewalks need to be or driveways, et cetera, are on that. I believe that's something that we talked about at the last meeting. It's something we're working on. That probably would help in your HOA.
I just wanted 2 points of clarification. When we spoke to Mr. Winters at some point during this issue, he did mention the other sidewalks. He did also mention that those were done. We would address those. We'll get to those. Your house is behind your house is not complete. We're dealing with this now, so just wanted to clarify that understanding. At this point, as you see it, the state of these sidewalks, that issue, that decision relies with the HOA. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, can you quite hear?
At this point, the state, the location of the sidewalk, the decision in regards to that, does lie within the HOA. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't really see how you have, I don't know the answer to that question, to be honest with you. I don't know what authority the HOA has to make them move it or not move it. Okay?
We've sought legal advice, but I just didn't know if there was a governmental policy procedure.
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I would like to think that we could have a full set of plans, or if we build them according to the plans, that everything is where it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
But I'm a realist, and I know that these things happen. I also know that the best solution is for people to put their heads together and come up with finding common ground. Okay? And I think you can do that, because if you drop down there and you look at all the sidewalks on there, it's not like you have a nice straight line.
No, we know that. We're aware of that. But so, there is a visual difference on this.
There is.
There is.
And
so
I think
that was it.
Yeah, and I think Mr. Winters is prepared to take care of it.
There's a 90-degree jog in our sidewalk that is not on the ones next to it. If you got into the Pennsylvania and Summit, there's a 90-degree jog out there. So I like the 90-degree jog, but I put in a 90-degree jog.
Gotcha.
They like the S-turns, I can put in the S-turns. I told them I can put in the S-turns.
I think at the end of the day, if the HOA can find the S-turn to be appropriate, you can do that, I think, and we can provide new easements, then hopefully that can make everybody happy. But I would most definitely look at your HOA and just, for those things where you want to maintain control, you have to have some sort of inspection or something. You have to have some leverage put in place to where if things aren't done where they need to be done.
Preferably before.
Yes. Yes, I agree.
Anybody can get Monday morning.
I get it.
Well, first of all, we are just taking over this. It is a mess, as you all know. And we're not site inspectors. We're not construction inspectors. So really, that is not part of our, He said it indeed it was. And yes, you know, I'm sorry that you stand up here and said that we didn't represent truthfully.
You did?
We did. We absolutely did.
See, well, I'm sorry because I would not say that about you.
Nodded your head.
You know what? I'm not going to say this with you. I'm just saying publicly since you said that you didn't. I feel I did, but it's obvious we both have two different things.
Obviously.
Obviously.
So I'm condescending again, I guess.
We're not going to do that. We're neighbors. We're trying to form a resolution. We're not going to do it. We spoke about that already. We have this conversation about being consistent. I ain't trying to help you with this. So you say that we're now being consistent is absolutely okay. Sorry, I'm done.
Roxanne and Debbie,
I'm done.
when the developer turned over the HOA to the residents and everything, they didn't give you the development plans that showed where all the sidewalks and everything were supposed to be, did they?
I can't remember. I do believe.
There are sidewalk easements down Pennsylvania. That's the only place where there are sidewalk easements.
Yes.
It's down Pennsylvania both sides. And as you go up on the north side of Pennsylvania, as it curves around to Volusia and up to Delaware. That's the only place. And this is all, I just got on the board 3 months ago.
So
and
they
this
didn't
is how
give you
my
the-
life has been spent, is trying to learn all of this.
So they didn't give you the complete for the whole development then, that showed where everything was supposed to
It might
originally
exist. I
be?
don't have it in front of me. We've got.
I have it down.
documents.
Because that would have resolved a lot of issues when the residents come to build, is to say, you know, well, where am I going? And you show them and say, this is what you gotta have around it and stuff. So, yeah, they dropped the ball on you guys, and I'm sorry you guys are behind the 8 ball because of it.
But like you said, it's a process.
So
Now
when
we
people
know
buy
we're
a piece
there.
of property, I assume they see that there's easements on it. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't
and
think it's the HOA's responsibility to tell people. I mean, you get a piece of property and it shows easements and all.
I-
So one quick note, we did notify the city of those sidewalks within 72 hours of their being built.
and
They were.
that's what I was gonna say. I think the one area where
They were.
the city can be helpful, I don't know that they need to be responsible or complicit, but they can be helpful by when the permitting process is being done, and it's in a known subdivision where there is an HOA, they say, look, it's your responsibility to find out what all the rules and regulations are of the HOA, so you can live harmoniously with your neighbors.
We have asked for that so
Yeah.
many times. We
Right.
really have. And that would be wonderful. It would stop a lot of what's
Yeah,
going on.
I've been told by Debbie that she does do that.
Say it a little louder.
Debbie does do that. She tells everybody who's in the HOA that
Okay.
they need to go and talk to their HOA and make sure they're in compliance with the HOA as well. So,
There you go.
my understanding that is being done.
Yep. You know, sometimes things just fall through the cracks. I hate it when it happens, but sometimes there's no reasonable explanation.
We'll work on a resolution. Thank you, Mel. Thank you for the time.
All right. We have sidewalk this thing to death, and I'm ready to move on to quasi-judicial hearing. Do any one of these items under quasi-judicial A through E, does any of the commissioners wish to pull any of them?
Vice Mayor, you also need to ask for the ex parte communication.
Thank you very much. Is there any ex parte communication? Would anyone, there's any of the items to be pulled? No, then I'd love to have a motion.
Mayor, also open up for public comment. Vice Mayor.
Is there anyone in the House who would like to speak on any of these quasi-judicial permitting? 321 East Ohio, 363 Summit, 376 Washington, 352 Lemon, or 128 North Lakeview? There appears to be none. Okay. Now I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the quasi-judicial certificate of permit.
We have a motion by Commissioner Rutledge and a second by Commissioner Bishop to approve the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items on the quasi-judicial. If there's no further discussion, all in favor say aye. Say aye, and the motion passes unanimously. Commission reports by zone. Commissioner Rutledge? Oh, excuse me. I skipped right past the public forum, darn it. I didn't see any cards to where anyone had anything in addition to what I've already seen. Maybe that's why I did it. But this is an opportunity for anybody to bring up something new or old and on the public. Going once, going twice, sold. All righty. Commission reports by zone. Commissioner Rutledge?
I would like to start with an Arbor Day update, kind of a recap of what we've learned this year. Firstly, it was well attended. I thought it was a nice event, nice turnout. I've received a lot of positive feedback for this event. And that's not to say it didn't come with its challenges. It was definitely a learning opportunity for me as the first event. At this time, though, I would like to turn it over to our city administrator for a little bit of a recap on what we saw behind the scenes.
Heather's telling you the nice things about the event. It was a very, very successful, well-attended event. Passed out several hundred trees. The ugly part, the part that I had to deal with, as we bought the trees originally, a group of trees from a nonprofit, a national nonprofit organization. They arrived basically dead, and we attempted to revive them, but they were not revivable. We had a claim the refund. We received a partial refund today. I'm confident on where we'll get the entire amount we paid for them refunded. So I'm not concerned about that. And I know, at least from a staff perspective, we're not going to use that organization again. And not necessarily that they're a bad organization as much as they ship the trees from a totally different weather climate zone than Florida. Florida, I think we all agree, is unique. They did not have leaves, so they were very peaky condition. Time I called them, they swear they're going to burst out in buds of flowers and everything, and they never did. Even though we did do everything plus what we were instructed to do. So that's the bad part. We'll not repeat next time. So next year, Heather will only be able to do nice things in her report and not talk about any bad things, which we might. No, it was a wonderful event.
Thank you. I would like to move on to software. I know we have recently been talking about, I don't know if you want to elaborate more on this, city administrator, or even pass it along, but we've been talking about software as regards to permitting, HR, etc. And so I was hoping that we could kind of just touch on that and what that looks like for the expansion of what we already have.
As you know, and Dominic, if I need to say something, as you know, we went to a totally new financial reporting system called Clarion, much more flexible and how it reacts to our needs. And one of the things that they are producing right now, they're producing several new modules. And I guess it's back a little bit. The basic Clarion software is financial recording, accounts receivable, payable, things like that. Another module they're doing is HR, another module they're doing is purchasing. We're doing a series of modules, and we entered into this relationship with Clarion early in their development, early in the company's development. So they have asked if they could use us to help develop some of this software and have a substantial reduced cost because of that. So we are agreeing they're getting paid, which I don't mind. I'm not just going to go live with it. So any mistakes in the getting paid process will stay internal. But we're going to come out with basically a module in a number of areas that will actually then be, like Helen module, being sold nationally. So
Thank you. Could you give us an update on lake maintenance and where we are in that process?
Lake maintenance, I was part of the statewide conference call. This is actually a regional conference call with the botanists who were in charge from Florida Wildlife Commission. And there are certain botanists associated with each of the lakes that are considered navigable. We have two, of course, Macy and Lake Helen. And in that process, they report what they have seen in their lakes since the last report, basically this year, and what they intend to do with it. And they then come up with their budget allocations, etc. We have a separate budget allocation of $20,000 that we had put into the budget last year. It was in the current year. And it's available for the city and for wildlife to use if necessary. We will probably use most of that for dredging and mechanically moving the weeds. They use sprays almost exclusively. They're less expensive to do that, but it does have the problem of the material then after it dies is subject to rot, and you end up with inches and inches and stuff and feet of muck. So we're trying to avoid that.
Do we have a recommendation on when this might be occurring? I know last we spoke, we were going to, we had given staff direction to consult with Sean Patton.
Well, Sean has consulted with our local botanists on chemicals they intend to use for the plants that they intend to kill, and he approved them all and said they were perfectly acceptable for the use that they were intended. So there's no issue there. I have yet to get back with them on a mechanical issue. Lake Macy is the one that probably would use the mechanical removal more than Helen. But we're going to work with our consultant. What's best for them? Unfortunately, we have a one set aside for them.
So we don't have a specific date range in mind right now that has been recommended to us when this will be occurring?
I wish I did. When they're going to be doing it, I could find out when they're going to do it, when we're going to be able to come up with a mechanical thing, we have to go to bid. So it's a much slower process for us to do. But I'll find out, I'll report back to you on what the FWC is going to do. And the time frame.
Thank you. Just making that here. I wanted to bring up the topic of interns tonight. I know we had a little bit of a lighter agenda, and this is something I've been talking with staff about for several months, and how plausible it would be. I know we have a lot of antiquated records that would be nice to make electronic, and other tasks that we could benefit from having an intern. And so I wanted to kind of open up the discussion to see if the climate was there, if that's a waste of their time to discuss. But I would like to see if we could acquire some interns to be helpful to staff, as other cities do. I don't know if anybody has any input on that, or if you wanted to speak on it first.
Because I've done this before, there are two components to scanning documents and digitizing them. And we have, as Heather said, we have done the choke course of years and years and years setting up in the storage room. But you need two things. You need personnel, which would be the intern, and you need equipment to scan it. And I haven't purchased it in years, so I don't know what the scanning would cost. I know it's not cheap. But of course, you want to scan drawings, you have to get the size that you can scan the actual drawings from the construction process, which is great to have. So I would advocate at least looking at getting that size of the scanner. But then once you have the equipment, then it's just a matter of the labor going into it. And it's not an easier, quick process, but if you stay at it steadily, you can work on it, take care of the material we have in storage upstairs. One of the interesting things to be allowed that I've done before, you have to have every department represented in a committee. And the first thing they need to do is pick street's name and how you abbreviate, avenue and drive, or you put that in as full name. Every one of those terms have to be agreed upon and entered correctly for every department and every document. And if you don't, you just never can find the one that's the oddball. You just lost in ether. So, very important first step. Nobody thinks of that. And it's absolutely necessary for the road. And that'd be the first. And again, the interns can play a lot of part of that. And they can be coordinators of the coordination of the nomenclature.
Right, I think some of that comes back full circle to the software that we were seeing if it was even reasonable to bring up. Is that there might be an extension of the software we have with Clarion that does record keeping and would be able to search it.
The software I'm familiar with is proprietary to the mechanical instruments that actually do the scanning. And they can talk to, but they're not part of the other financial ones. So you could retreat from probably a Clarion, but you can't use our Clarion to be the software that actually scans it up. That comes with the equipment itself. And proprietary. That's my experience. We can get into that.
So I guess bringing it up tonight, I was hoping to kind of get the temperature of how the commission is feeling about having interns or starting to explore the option of interns and what your thoughts are on that. If anyone wanted to weigh in.
I follow what the staff wants to do, because they're the ones that work with. They're happy with that.
Do you need anything else on that? Okay, great. The last question I have is if you could please give us an update with where we are with our Public Works Director position.
As you know, going back, the commission rejected all of the applications we had up to the point, most recently recommending to you a couple of candidates for just the Public Works position, not having the C license. Then we started advertising for applications for individuals with a C license that have management experience. That has produced individuals that to be blunt are just too expensive. They were basically one individual most recently is making $140,000 in Evanston, Illinois. He was willing to take a cut to 90, but he couldn't go below that. And so I have talked to, I think, each of you, except I haven't had the chance to talk to Roger yet, cutting apart those two positions. So you had a Public Works Director without a C license and have an employee in the department with a C license, which is basically the way it was 30 years ago. We had a Public Works Department and we had an individual in there who had a C license. So the suggestion is we go back there. It'd be much more economical to do it that way. I checked with Deltona, which of course has a big water system as well. They can bring in a C license individual. They have no difficulty doing that for approximately $40,000 a year versus the numbers we were dealing with from other candidates who have both management and a C license. Having the management experience, when they were upper level utility people that have been in the business for years, and they were commanding huge sums. So that's what we're getting to. The first thing we have to do is give to the commission job descriptions for the two individuals. So we have the one for Public Works without, we need to give you one for the C license individuals. We don't have one. Once that's approved, we'll be able to bring back candidates. We're still working on that. It's been a frustrating process for everybody.
So when do we expect to see that update?
We'll have the job descriptions for next meeting. we've already advertised in anticipation of your approval for the C license individuals. We have candidates for the people without the C license, and we've already started the advertising process in anticipation of the approval for having the others. So we're not losing a lot of time just by waiting for next week or next month, rather. We have the job description. It's not going to be after anything until then. We'll be able to do something after that.
Okay. I'm gonna leave it for now.
Two things. The first one is Nancy Weary has been working on a project for a few years now to have a wildlife corridor and it's a combination of wildlife corridor and a water retention, or not water retention,
Land conservation. Land conservation.
yeah, what she said, I didn't quite hear it, but yeah, land conservation, and it also has a stream going through it, so it's also related to the water recharge and stuff like that. With no commitment to the city on any, or no financial commitment to the city, it would be nice if the city would endorse this wildlife corridor. It would run from Ohio, following the stream all the way down to Lake Macy. In her time that she's put into it, there have been a couple residences that are on their own, I believe, going to the Forever program for their property to be put into the Forever program to save it so it don't get developed on and it becomes part of the wildlife corridor. And I think the city's endorsement on this program and protecting that corridor will benefit the residents and the city greatly, and has the option, has the capability, because of where it's located at, to include trails, multi-use trails, which includes, bicycles, walking, jogging, horses, everything, to be able to use the trails through this area. You still have the map showing the location of all of it?
I do. I have an online petition that you can look at online. I can provide you any information.
Because I know it runs from Ohio, crosses Pennsylvania where the stream's at.
It runs from...
Come all the way down, crosses Ohio where the stream's at. Also connects to Melissa Park on the east side.
It runs from Maine all the way down to Ohio, Melissa Park. This is the fourth time I've nominated the area of land. The previous time, last year twice, I nominated all the way down to Lake Macy. We had willing sellers and there were hiccups. So I didn't include that last leg, this nomination. However, we've had one of those property owners come forward on their own and offer their property into the program that would help that last leg. It's truly a wildlife pocket that has a lot of environmental elements, including the watershed. It's been designated by the St. Thomas Water Management District as a true wetlands area, and to preserve that, conserve that, would truly benefit this entire city.
From what we've been able to find in there, there's deer, bear, fox, of course, your normal squirrels and birds and stuff like that.
Well, there's been panther. There's actually
Yeah,
been discussion.
somewhere in Lake Helen, there's a rumor of a panther running around.
Yeah.
Where, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
But in that process, I make a motion that the city back the program that she's trying, the properties that she's trying to, as an endorsement for the program to preserve it and create the wildlife corridor through that section of town.
But it sounds good to me. I would like to see it on paper, what lots are mapped out and blah, 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 blah. I'd be willing to support it, but I can't second a motion without passing this thing.
You can make a motion, as long as there's not another motion. I did, that's what she was asking. Not, well, if you want to do, you know, a letter of support for the wildlife corridor running from Main Street all the way down to.
Is this time sensitive, or can we get the data and look at it the next meeting?
I believe the next meeting is June 7th with Forever. We are endorsed, the nomination is endorsed by the Sierra Club and the Lucia Flagler Environmental Council, which has been around, both of the entities have been around for decades.
Was it June 7th? Yes.
No, I meant 16th, I don't know. June 7th sticks in my head. So,
June 16th?
Yes.
So you need information, you need action tonight in order to do your.
I would appreciate that. I didn't really realize Roger was going to bring it up. I have made great strides.
I think it's great, I'll second it. That's
There you
great.
go.
I was just gonna bring up about Sierra Club, it sounds like you've got your bases covered, so it's awesome. Thank you for doing that. It's amazing.
What action would you like us to take?
Oh, just a letter of support would be great
To whom?
to the Lucia Forever program.
So the motion is to write a letters of support for this particular, and you've got all the documentation and stuff, they've got it already. Yeah.
Yes, they got it. And I can send that to you guys tonight. Everybody can kind of see it and know what it is.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the city just applied for Florida Forever as well, to be encompassed in Florida Forever. I'm wording that incorrectly, I apologize.
I can't remember.
We're trying to work something out in Florida Forever as well.
With Volusia Forever or Florida Forever?
Florida Forever.
Florida Forever.
It'll help with moving forward with projects similar to this for Volusia Forever.
Okay.
So, just to put that on your radar.
Also included in the property that's in there, the city of Lake Helen also owns about, what, five
The
or
city
six?
owns, you'll be impressed when you see it. This nomination is adjacent to several city-owned properties and 3 existing trails that are already existing. So it is a very inclusive area.
Sounds like a nice piece of work. If there's no further discussion, we'd like to vote. And I think the vote would be on having the city write a letter to Lucia Forever. All in favor, say aye. Aye. It's passed unanimously. So staff, forward a letter. Thank you.
My next one is something I've been working on for quite a while. A lot of people ask me when I was going to have it completed and everything, and really it's not totally completed yet, but I titled it, Here We Go Again. Lee Abbott's leadership style is detrimental to the city of Lake Helen. When Lee Abbott started with the city, he was the interim city administrator. After the review of a number of candidates, Mr. Abbott was selected as our full-time city administrator. He was congenial and worked well with everyone he met. It seems that after his probationary time was completed, he changed and started shifting into his leadership style that he has adopted through his years of experience. What does this mean for a city like Lake Helen? We are mostly an urban community like Pearson, Barville, Oak Hill, etc. We are not a suburban boomtown like the communities Lee Everett managed in the past. We do not have a major highway like US 72 running through or near our town. So we will not get the businesses that fill those niches. We are going to get the small flower shops or convenience stores, and we would have to go out to find a restaurant like the Stockyard to move into the city. They say that we cannot let him go because he has not caused a large financial burden to the city. Well, let's go through what he has done. In my opinion, first, and not his fault, how did his contract get approved as written when commissioners wanted an employment renegotiation time added? Did the mayor receive wrong information, or was the attorney not paying attention? Or was it done as one of those, just sign it and we'll add it to the clause later? He forced the resignation of our public works director by intimidation or threatening his future job practices, or maybe it was because the director wanted to expand the public works to benefit Lake Helen. Or was it Mr. Everett had his sights on contracting out all city services and needed to remove an obstacle? I do not know, and that information would have to come from those involved. There's been a delay in the hiring a new public works director. About 2 years or more, we have been without a supervisor for the public works department, and they have been supervised by untrained, unqualified employees. The recent position advertisements went out to local newspapers. What happened to the trade publications, and why is it so hard to hire new employees? Is it the work environment too toxic? There's a possibility he also violated the city charter. Depending on how it is construed, Lee Everett possibly violated it by offering new employees higher wages than the starting $15 an hour that was approved by the commission. This is referenced by the action of prospective employees at past commission meetings when they stormed out when we talked about lower wages. Low communication skills. Businesses have requested building in Lake Helen, and according to their comments, Mr. Everett does not return emails or phone calls in a timely manner. This causes scheduling and financial problems for the prospective businesses. He does not work with the prospects to assist with development issues or negotiate solutions. He also appears to only give out what information he wants people to hear so that they support his process, and appears to tell one person a little twist to a subject from what he told another person. This has caused problems in Lake Helen by pitting citizens against each other. Our ordinances. You heard tonight about us trying to change some of our ordinances. But why are we having to change them? We had a process of having new ordinances go through the PLDRC prior to coming before the commission. The PLDRC deal with ordinances as part of the approval process, giving them the opportunity to advise on any new changes. When did this process change? Is there a rule sheet being used? Based on a number of issues that have come before the commission, Mr. Everett appears to allow his staff to choose which and when an ordinance substance is applied to a permit, which also falls on a problem with the building construction reviews. He has stated a few times that he was going to have staff work on a building plan review checklist so that everything needed is covered. Where was this when the issue of sidewalks came before us? And the city pickup truck. No, this subject has not gone away. I have been told by citizens and employees that the truck was requested to be purchased by a few people, and they were told they would have to wait for the bidding process before anyone could obtain it. Yet Mr. Abbott allowed an employee to remove the truck from the city yard and work on it off-site. Whether to strip it or to repair it, the subject differs and really doesn't matter. The fact that the others were willing to pay for it and were told no, and you allowed someone else to remove it is a big problem. The city does not know how much value was lost from your decision. And FEMA has a strict guideline to go by when documenting declared emergency. From my work with emergency management, emergency response, once a declaration is made, we were issued documents that had to be filled out every shift listing the crew and everything we did during our assigned time. If we didn't do it, the city didn't get reimbursed and we were held responsible. As far as the city's reimbursement, we would have to wait to see if leave had the documentations done right or followed the FEMA guidelines. Does there really have to be a monetary loss to determine an administrator's termination? No. If his management system does not reflect or move forward what the citizens of Lake Helen want to see in our town, then we can remove him. Many large cities have removed their managers for far less than what Lee Abbott has done to our Lake Helen. Some have changed once, twice, even 3 times a year. I now make a motion that we terminate Lee Abbott's contract with us.
There's a motion. You will. Just like.
I make a second.
Now, a motion is second to terminate Lee Abbott as a city administrator. Lee, would you like to defend yourself?
I certainly would, but I really can't tonight. It's taking way too long for me to come up with the answers. There's a whole bunch of subjects there that Roger put into the allegations. I will tell you that, no, I'm going to do that. Anything I'd say would be premature if I had a chance to look at this. Do you have a copy of that, Roger? Okay. Yeah, I'll just get a copy tomorrow. I'll be happy to respond to it and give everybody a copy of this one. It's a very complex. It is not an easy situation.
Vice Mayor, I'll just say, I believe the last time this was discussed, I was trying to see if I could find the easy contract. I think it outlines a process in the contract to go through for termination. I don't know if I have a signed contract here.
You can request a hearing where you can accept the termination.
Do you have a signed contract with him?
No, I've got all my laptop. I didn't bring it with me.
The one I have in the draft is one of the final signed. And I thought I had an email with a copy of it, but I thought the last time we discussed it, we had to have something in writing charging that he had a certain period of time to respond to it or something like that. What I recall the last time we talked about this came up for discussion. And I thought you said you were gonna leave and write up all your charges or something like that.
This was in October, I believe.
What's that?
It was October, November, last time I think we discussed
We,
it.
yeah, it was.
I don't know when it was.
While you're looking at that, Scott, Roger, repeat your motion because I don't know if I heard a termination date.
Make a motion that we terminate Lee Abbott's contract with us. It's not for cause or nothing, just terminate his employment.
That's the question I'm asking. is that effective immediately, or is that?
No, because there's a process that's got to go. If we vote to terminate, then there's a process that's got to go through, and we decide what date we want to do it back. So, I mean, I can say by the end of the month.
Well, I guess what I'm getting at is if someone is so inadequate to do the job here, why do you want them here?
I really don't. You said you got to trust someone. I don't trust it specifically.
I understand.
Is there public comments? Is there public comments? On this topic? My question is, has anyone had a conversation with Lee prior to this date about his performance? Have we had a conversation and saying these are the areas that you are lacking?
Yes,
Or where your performance is, and that's not what it's.
I have personally had that conversation on more than one occasion, sharing my concerns.
And did you come up with a plan as which, you know, do this by this day, or we have to see increase in performance?
There is not a plan.
There's no plan. No. Is it possible that that's something that could be considered? Here's what I'm saying. An employee is only as good as the leadership that is supporting them.
We can't hear you.
An employee is only as good as the leadership that's supporting it. It's manager, it's the supervisor. And that's not to say anything negative about you guys. But if he's doing something that is inappropriate or his performance is not to the level of we expect, we have to let him know. We have to hold him accountable. We have to set certain steps in place to allow him the opportunity to improve. And if he doesn't act, then this is the motion that we have. This is taking away any personal views that I may have about Lee's performance. That's just the right thing to do from an organizational leadership perspective. So I caution you to think about that. I understand what you have said in your document. I see your point of view, absolutely. 3 months, 2 months, if it's 2 months, you've got to do this, this, and this by this time. Well, yes, you're right. That's just my thoughts. I caution you to consider that. That's all.
Roxanne, one of the issues that we have is that I cannot do a correction discussion with Lee without the entire commission being involved in it, because I'm only 1/5 and it takes all of us. According to our charter, I cannot discuss it with an employee alone. So,
Have you had a conversation similar of some type?
In October or November, in the commission meeting.
and there's been one prior to that too, also.
So, in essence, then the discussions have been happening, and no one's regretting it.
talking about this subject.
No, I was asking what kind of scotch he drinks.